Habari ya asubuhi. Morning, everyone. I can see a very good number stand out, and I am glad. As you've heard, my name is Raquel Otieno. I am the board chair for Raise Your Voice, and I am glad that you have come to represent us in this festival as we amplify SRHR issues. And I am happy that you have honored the invitation to come, because if you won't be here, then you won't have a festival. So feel free, speak out, speak up, because the only way that we can be heard here in Kenya, it is through speaking out. So this is a platform, an open space for everyone. You can share anything. You can speak your mind freely, and no judgments, because we want to push forward as advocates and as youths, so that our voices can be heard even more. Let us enjoy the day, and feel free. Hi, Doris. Anatuona matuoni. Hi, Doris. I am fine. You know she's the boss lady. So without her, we can't even be here without Doris. So I am glad that she has made this possible. She has given us a platform together with all the partners who are here. And feel free to mingle. This is a time to know other organizations that can help push the SRHR message forward, because such spaces are very rare. And I hope that you utilize this space today. Share, put hashtags there, X, Twitter X, Huko, Instagram, when you're on TikTok, post anything that is related, and you'll be very happy. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Can you all hear me?
One of my speakers who
Imezima.
because of issues here and there.
Oh, mnanisikia? Oh, I can't hear myself, so
She's joined us online.
so there is one of my speakers who, unfortunately, because of issues here and there, will not be able to join us here, but she's joined us online. Anita, if you're with us, could you please unmute and say hi?
Sorry?
Could you put your video on if you're comfortable?
Good morning. Are you comfortable us seeing you?
Internet is not. Something is up with my laptop.
Could you put your video on if you're comfortable, please?
I will put it on. But I am here. I'm sorry I wasn't able to be there physically, but I am with you.
Okay, thank you so much. So Anita is a results-driven qualitative and quantitative researcher with 8 years experience and has a proven record of leading cross-functional teams to achieve organizational goals. I'm reading her bio, guys. My work centers on financial management, feminist participatory action and research, trauma-informed facilitation, and intersection activism to inform and influence policy changes, challenging structural and social barriers that lesbian, bisexual, queer, and trans people face in the Western Kenya. So she works a lot in the Western region. Most recently, Anita became the finance and research manager of Women Empowerment and mentor all CBO called We Power, all LGBTQ feminist organization based in Kisumu, Kenya. Women Empower is member-based organization which focuses on collective well-being, health and equity for LGBTQ plus persons through mental health promotion, economic empowerment, community strengthening, and building social political action. So briefly, that is who Rita is. Welcome my panelists. Welcome everybody to the room. I'm expecting that you'll be attentive, and in case you have burning questions, please note them down so we can be able to ask our different panelists at the end of the session. Are we together? Yes. If you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice. And so the discussion is around stories. So it's going to hear a lot of their stories, a lot of the experiences. And as we listen to them, let's listen from a point of empathy, from a point of trying to understand, and also trying to also see how best do we support each other. Because they may be their stories, but there might be some of us who are experiencing the same thing. So this is also an opportunity for us to learn from each other. Cool? Right, let's get right into it. So based on your experience, we've all come from different communities, and I'd want to hear your different perspectives on the same, because tunatoka communities tofauti, right? So from your community, what has your experience been and how has that influenced how you look at use of sexual reproductive health and rights? I'll start with you because you have the mic. Sasa ongea na sisi.
As for me, my experience has been good. It was tough at the start because you are dealing with yani unadeal na made mwenye yani huyu anaweza kuwa anafikiria hii na huyu mwingine afikirie hii, and wamekuwa wakifundishwa but hawajakuwa wakiiwekitilia manani, hawajakuwa kitilia manani. So venye tuli get deep na tukaanza ku associate na wao. Hey, nakwambia hawa wasichana wali raise voices mpaka ukasema kumbe kuna kitu inakuwa gatine inawafinyilia, but wakipata ule mtu mwenye anawaambia you have to do this, wanafanya. So now they wameelewa sexual reproductive health, they know where to access it. Mwanzo hakukuwa hata wanataka kuenda, wanasema watakuwa manasi watakuwa judgmental, oh huyo nasi ni jirani, oh huyo nasi ni rafiki ya mamangu, oh unaona. But saa hii kwa tupoa.
So wana access services.
Yeah.
Okay, na wewe pia personal story, how story yako imesaidiaje na how did you end up kufanya history advocacy na advocate for issues of sexual reproductive, like ni nini ilifanya ukasema mimi nataka kuingia kwa hii space na niongelee hizi vitu?
So nimegrow kwa slum, Kibra slum, na life ijakuwa kwa imekuwa tough. And mimi nimekuwa na mzazi mwenye hakuwa na time ya kuniongelesha. My mom was always away. My dad was drunk ever. No one could speak to me. Nilikuwa na issues nataka niongee, but siwezi ongea. So I also became a victim of abortion. Sorry to say that, because I had no one to talk to and to speak up my mind with. Through bad companies, I went to a quack. I almost lost my life, by the way. That inspired me, by the way, because I met Dr. Agri, who was at Family Health Options Kenya, and he introduced me to youth-friendly services where you could open up and speak. And there I met Doris Katia, and when I saw she was a rights defender and a rights defender for girls, and she could talk to girls. I opened up, and by the way, I also worked as a sexual worker. That's why I defend the rights of sexual workers. They need to be respected. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing. And based on what she's saying, we can clearly tell the importance of information for women and girls. The role of information and correct and accurate information of sexual reproductive health and rights for us to avoid issues of young women accessing unsafe abortions and losing their lives. So thank you so much for sharing that. Tanya, what has your experience been? What is your story and how did you end up into this space?
My passion, or what drove me into advocacy actually was when I was when you're going to campus and you're doing things called health education in public health, and I attached at Kibra DC Hospital, and you talk to children, family children, hand washing, menstruation, and blah blah blah, and that got me thinking. With this platform, then, can you be able to teach girls? And for me, I feel like we already have an issue here, and we are trying to find a solution for that issue. And what we have to do, for my point of view, is train our children when they're young. Because now, when you're dealing with this, when you're seeking justice and providing support system for victims, we are trying to reduce that number of victims. And that number of victims is by training your children on how to have healthy relationship and live a good life, yeah? And again, also as when we are girls, I am not from Kibra, I'm from Meru. We didn't have, I don't know if I say raise your hand, someone's whose mother sat them down and taught them about menstruation. I would want to know, because in my time, me and my sister, she's there. And yesterday's when I was saying, I asked her yesterday, who did you go to when you started, your menses? And she's like, I went to my elder sister. And I was like, me, I was alone with my brother, and I kind of sorted it out. And now I try to understand the things I went through, and I want to be a sister for someone. I want a girl to know what to do. Because that time, the pads were they had like a smell. They always were perfumed. I hated that. There is nobody who showed me the front and the back. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a bit, mutanielewa, yeah?
Be
Yes. The front part is shorter than the back side, yeah? I didn't know that. So sometimes I wear it and I'm like, nasiko comfortable. Because mbele in the Numa part, I have put it at the front. And I'm telling you, by the time I figured out menses and how to deal with it, I was in Form 3. Form 3. Can you imagine? So you have had your menses for the last 4 years, and you still don't know what you're doing. You don't know even how to count your days. And then in that area, then a girl comes to you, because that's how you are wearing like a white apron, and a girl approaches you and tells you, you know what? I think I'm pregnant and I don't know what to do. And you start championing. First, you have to the belief. You are like, do I start talking about abortion, or do I tell her, okay, do you want to keep it? Do you know the father? Is he supportive? So I don't have that kind of, I want to direct her to someone. But that time, the Kibradi City don't have a place for youth-friendly services. And now I'm left, telling her now, this is your burden to carry. And that is what I try to teach the young girls. It's your burden. To be honest, sex for women, we have the highest, the weight. The weight of sex, we carry it a lot. So I try to explain to her now, these are consequences for you, for your action. What are you willing to do? So my shape in advocacy is, how do you change beliefs? Do you know beliefs are very strong? You can't tell, what's her name, Leila. Ukikuja kwangu na nimepika pork, you will tell me to wait for 7 days, yeah? 7 days before you can use my utensils, because that's your religious beliefs, yeah? And I don't want her to change that. But tearing away beliefs to make people unlearn things and learn new things is so difficult. It is very difficult. By going to tell my mother that I am advocating for abortion, you will meet the devil. Utakufa vibaya wewe na kuhuru. So when you're approaching those things, you have to take a curve and a corner and understand where is this person coming from before you start, drilling them with information. And that is where we are.
Thank you. Thank you for amplifying the aspect of listening to people from a point of empathy as they share their stories. And before you go in with your own beliefs, you also need to understand where is this other person coming from, so you don't also end up implicating or sharing your own personal opinions and views about something. And from what you're saying, sometimes if you don't know something, you don't know. And it's important for us to have the network for us to be able to do the referrals like she was talking about. So if you're here, please network so that you have access to the different networks and the different people. So by the time an issue is coming to you, you know who to talk to. Yeah. If you can't do it by yourself, at least you know somebody who can offer support. Over to you. Please share with us. Nimesikia wewe ndio guru wa kufanya kazi Mukuru. So could you please share with us how has your experience been working within the community, and how did you end up working within the community in the first place?
Hi everyone. People have been sharing stories. Now here is my story, why I started this and who mentored to be here. So being a firstborn of 5, we are 4 girls and 1 boy. The worst part came in when my second, the sibling mwenye ananifuata, the sister, alianza kuattend na mimi sijaanza. And I was called by my mother. Na wewe umeanza kunyesha? Na nikamwambia mimi sijaanza kunyesha. No, my sister started receiving menses while she was in class 6 and I was in Form 1.
Oh.
na sijapata na sina shida, sina hata matiti.
Uko tu hapo unaendelea na life.
Katambe. So when I received my menses, that was in Form 2 now. I called my mother, who was in boarding school. Leo nimeona. And she was like, at least you are normal. So mimi hiyo time sikuwa na feel venye nilikuja kukumit na warembo wa Mkuru ndio ni feel venye na feel sahi. So nikona there is this gap. You might be older na mdogo wako apate menses kitu ya kwanza kama hujaipata, and you're just normal because I'm normal. So and by good luck I met my mentor. She's here. Nilikuwa tu nimetumwa na kazini yangu enda mahali uongee au nisimamie. She was pregnant and I met her. So mimi sikuwa najua watu wanaendanga meeting wanasomeshwa alafu wanalipwa. Worst part ilikuwa wanalipwa. So in the entire 5 days she can tell you, mimi hata sikuwa naelewa kitu yoyote, but we were girls, wasichana wadogo na pia wakubwa kama yeye, na nilikuanga na admire. Nenda mapema naona venye wanaingia, venye wamevaa, venye wanaongea, wako na ile confidence. Hiyo kitu ilikuwa inafanya nasema hii kitu ni nini. Then after that mimi hata sikuwa imwambia kitu. She took my number then akaniambia I want to empower you. Na niyo nilijipata kwa hii space. Na nikaona niko at the right time, at the right place, everything. So doing the best thing that I love is nashindwa kusema R.
It is okay. It is okay.
So the best place I love about it is safe abortion. By the if I can receive even your call at 3, talk about safe abortion. So the story comes in. There's a certain time I met a girl. I first heard stories of a girl wanted to abort and she doesn't have anywhere to go. I also didn't know anywhere I can take her. Then I listened to her story. She have got that pregnant and mtoto bado ni 6 months mwenye amezaa. So that interval alikuwa anaona haezi beba mimba wakati bado ananyonyesha mwingine. Then I shared a story with the people. That's how I started. And you see, we are living in slums. Some are having a safe abortion and they're throwing the fetus all over. Ukipita tu unakutana tu na watoto wametupwa. And as a mother, una feel vibaya sana. So that's when I started saying that I better champion for it, at least give knowledge to my peer in the community, so at least they can have this safe abortion. At least waende have abortion place poa, watadispose your fetus mahali papoa penye hata kuja aone tena. Unajua ametupa hapa, alafu kesho anapita hapo. Imagine unaona mtoto wako hapo na huku umemtarajia kumulea, kukua na yeye. Wewe unataka kuondoke juu kukua na plan. Unaona ukimwona hapo utawahi heal. So that's when I started championing for it. Through her, I met Rachel Mikali, CJHRD. She has been supportive, plus Doris. And that's how I've been taking girls for safe abortion, giving them knowledge. Paka saa hii Mkuru mtu haezi enda kwa kwake. Kikiumana niambia wendo sikuwa nimejipanga lakini nisaidie na hapa. Then I will do the necessary, at least atenda place fiti, atatoa mimba vizuri, tutatake care after abortion, atapata hiyo counseling, atakuwa sawa. And I've seen girls wako sawa sana. Na hata hizo cases size zimereduce. After that you have to give her knowledge on contraceptive. Juu sasa utamwambia nitakuwa na kusaidia unatoa mimba kila siku. Si watoto wataisha kwa tumbo. Yeah, so after that mwambie kuna contraceptive, kuna hizo family planning, maybe uko na mtoto, jikinge, na kama unataka ku have raw sex tumia PrEP. Jikinge paka na HIV hivyo. Sasa hiyo ndio knowledge huko tu mtando tunapatiana.
Okay, thank you very much. We all come from different communities with different value systems, with different beliefs, whether it's cultural, whether it's religious. So I want to hear, how has that, MJ, how has that affected how you do your work? How has religious, cultural, and the beliefs within your community affected the work that you do?
It has affected both negative and positive. When you talk about safe abortion in Mukuru, first of all, you are a killer. You are recruiting girls to go and get pregnant and come, you take them to abort the baby. That is a negative part of it. But you see, in Islam, as Mercy has said, you are being, the parent that you are having, she only focuses on kutafuta chakula kwa meza venye utakula na venye utasoma. So you don't have any information about maybe sexual reproductive health right, maybe GBV. You are living with maybe a stepdad. That stepdad maybe anakushikashika, so anaanza na kukushikashika ndio akurep. Na wewe hutasema jumzazi ako ever busy. So hiyo society yenye sisi tunakaa ndani, kumbuka hii ndio place wewe unakaa, unaielewa in out. You see, this society doesn't have all this knowledge that you need to give. You see, the society haitaki mimi kama safe abortion champion nipeane hiyo knowledge kwa vijana, that is girls. Siku hizi hatupei vijana, wasichana peke yake, we include them all. So you find you
Just keep using it.
You find both boys and girls hawana hiyo knowledge. Ju community haitaki mtu yote mwenye anaongelelea abortion aongee kwa hiyo community. That is a negative way. So unaanza kwanza ukiongea unaongea ukijificha ficha, because unataka pia warembo wenzako wasipotee. Ju immediately that girl anapata ujauzito, together with the boy maybe wanakubaliana hatuko ready kulea huyu mtoto, let's go and do the abortion. Then the boy takes the girl to a quack, anamuingiza huko ndani mawaya, hujui amekata nini ndani ya tumbo. No, you don't know the future of the girl after ametoka kwa quack, si ndivyo? Yeah. So the reason why hii society saa zingine na shape, saa zingine na katani, I want to give the information to all girls so that in case of abortion that or in case of a pregnant that you didn't plan for, come tuongee. Sometimes I involve mwenye alikupea mimba. Juu unaweza toa na yeye hakuwa amekubaliana na wewe. It needs to be a collective agreement, nyinyi wawili. So naita msichana na muongelesha na mwambie instead of going to a quack kuja huku, but sometimes kisiri squeezing, at least you can talk. Venye naongea hapa pia mtaa tukiwa ina mahali unaangalia pia religious leaders pia hawataki kusikia. See, they're part of society. So unaangalia hii room kuna religious leader, then una limit zile vitu unaongea. Na kuna bado religious leaders wenye wana support kazi tunafanya, si ndio? Tuko paka na administration wenye bado they support. So kuna wengine it has shaped me in a positive and in a negative way, but I have to push. Lazima niendelee juu hii information lazima nipeane wasichana wanapotea. Wanaenda kwa wanaharibishwa huko ndani ya tumbo, and we need children's kesho. Tunataka president pia sisi kutoka kwetu mayouth, si ndio? So imenishape in a negative way bado in a positive way. Hivyo tunaweza sema.
Okay. Thank you so much. So based on what you said in terms of the challenges working within the community, and especially with how the community sees you and the work that you do, because you've spoken about how you are trying to navigate, you have your period, you don't know what to do, you figured it out on your own. So what are some of the things in terms of the barriers that you've experienced in the work that you do, and how have you navigated through it?
Well, as I have said, beliefs are so rooted. And mtu ni watu, si ndio? Mtu ni watu. And most of the time we did look for the way people look at us. Vile umetoka asubuhi ukavaa, ukajiangalia kwa kioo. 30% was about you and the way you feel, and 70% was how will people view me. Is it, si ndio? So with that being said, the way people think about them will make people make some very bad choices. Like the other day, my mama mboga, I am a what's that name? I am a creature of habit. you go to your salonist, you don't change salonist that easily, or your barber, right? You got the
The
same
day you
barber.
change, you'd get disappointed.
So, naenda kubai mboga kwake, and I meet her. She's really bruised, yeah? I'm a grown up. I know what has happened because unasikia stories fulani is being abused, but unajua huwezi enda uambie mtu wewe unakuwa abused toka. So I asked her, hey, Ana, what's up? And she's like, sini mzee wangu. Nikamuliza kwa nini? Well, she won't tell you the reason. Ati alikuja akapata chakula iko na chumvi mingi ama kukua na mboga. She won't like go into detail. She's like, mimi nimechoka. Nikachukua mboga zangu, I went home. And you might think, sasa wewe ungekaa hapo muongeleshe. But me, when I think about GBV and SGBV, it's from a place of passion that when I am writing, I almost ruin my keyboard. Yani, yani, it's you want to crawl out of your skin. Na ingekuwa kama COVID vaccine, you inject people with knowledge, I would do that. Munawapangisha line hapo and I teach you on Richard. So I went home heartbroken. And then I'm a creature of habit, so I went back for now tomatoes. And I didn't meet people there. And I felt like, you can't start talking about somebody being battered in front of other people. It's not something like she's happy about. And you can imagine the courage for her to come out with her bruises na endelee na biashara na kukatie mboga. What that takes. And so, a friend of hers, she's pregnant, she's seated there, she's anamaliza craving yake na maembe mbichi hapo. And so I asked her, sasa Anna, what's your plan? You don't want to hear, nataka kuelewa, what's your plan? She's like, mimi nimechoka. And I'm like, no, what's your plan? And she's like, mimi nilimwambia that akiniguza tena, anko zangu watatoka Kisii. Unajua hata hajablipa mahari. And then the pregnant lady, now before Anna could finish what she was telling me, we said, huyu angekuwa wa kutoka. Angetoka when the daughter was young, because the daughter now is, I think, going 10 years. And that breaks your heart, because you wish you can tear her from that situation. But somebody has to be willing to be helped for you to help them. You will not drag a 16-year-old who is pregnant to an abortion clinic if they don't want. But when akili zako, you know what this is going to do to her, and there's nothing, you are helpless. Uko hapo tu na muangalia tu future yake ikienda na hivyo. So I told her, now, if you're not going to do it for yourself, you have to find a way of this person not battering you, because clearly you're not living. But then again, you have to do it for your daughter. Because na akanipea story, akaniambia mtoto wao wakicheza na watoto wengine hapo nje, and they are playing kalongolongo, and they're now doing their wedding part. And she says, mimi sitaki kukua bibi harusi. Ndio nikuwe napigwa kama mama yangu. Mimi sitawaiolewa. And I told her, we are not here because you are knowledgeable than you. I want knowledge from you too. Most girls end up resenting their mothers for staying in abuse. Am I wrong? Am I wrong, guys? No. You are like, you should have left with me and those clothes, and you should have left. And I tell her, this is going to ruin her. So for me, the way society views some things, like the way society views somebody that has been through abortion. To be honest, if I stood here and I told you I've been through 3 abortions, you will not see me as a public health specialist anymore. Kuna kaango kameingia, be honest. Kuna kaango kameingia hapo. 3 zote. Kwani ajui condoms? pull and pray. You start viewing people differently. And that is why the girl will not come. Because hataambia hata rafiki yake, juu rafiki yake hataambia rafiki yake, and it's mkuru. Your neighbor is my neighbor. Unaniambia nini? Umetoa mimba ngapi? Toka hapa. So, umeona mtu akikunywa, the things they will do to get rid of that pregnancy will shock you. So, as for me, kidogo ni ngumu. But a day at a time, yeah?
Thank you so much. I think with the work that we do, we often don't talk about the difficult part of it. The mental health issues that come with working with these issues. Sindio? Like MJ amesema, anaweza pigiwa simu 3 AM. And because she's a human rights defender, ataamka enda asaidie. But then I think it's also important to also talk about the discussion of tunasaidia aje human rights defender themselves. Then MJ, Mercy, tuambie, ukisha story yako publicly, because you are here, you're sharing your story with us. What issues gani experience from the community especially, ukisha story yako about the aspect that you went through on safe abortion, the part that saizi una advocate for safe abortion so that wasichana wengine wasipitie kenye ulipitia. Community na kureceive experience yako imekuwaje ukisha story?
I come from a community where when you mention sex, it's a taboo. Aka katoto kameharibika haki, nisikuone na yeye, unasikia. And they will always quote, no sex before marriage. Okay. When you have that sex, you are a sex worker. There is a community where when you are not allowed to use contraceptives. Again, we come to that. There is also a community where they judge you badly according to your dress code there. They think that akadani kamalaya akanika bwangi nisikone nayo. They judge you badly.
For wale ambao hawajui gwangi ni nini, waambie tafadhali.
Gwangi is like a prostitute. Is a prostitute. So they judge you badly in my community. Me, I was judged. I was an example. Hey, naka sikalitoa bimba aka. Nisikuone naye kameharibika. Nana benye babake ni mlevi hata mamake ashughulikagi na yeye. That's what I went through. But when I met Katia and I started, I got interested. I wanted to be like her to fight for the rights of these women. Si kila mtu anatakaga kuwa sex workers. There are no jobs in the slums. MJ, unaweza ni bear witness. There are no jobs. Hakuna kazi. Hatu andike CV nafanya. Hatu apply aje. Unapata mtu anakuambia Masinde itisha aje babangu pads. Utamkataza kwenda hiyo shughuli? Utamkataza ndani. Hawezi mkataza. Juu yenyewe ana haso. Ni tu mwambie ni aje. Sitaki ukwe kama mimi. Uende kwa doctor. Sasa najua kuna kitu inajitanga safe abortion. Najua pia unaweza enda mahali uambiwe 10k na najua ulilalishwa na 200. Sasa itabidi pia mimi nimekuunganisha na mtu mwenye anajua anaweza kufanya nini? Anaweza kusupport. Haya, unapata mtu anakuambia Masi hutaki niende sex work. Mamangu ni mlevi sijamuona wiki moja. Na hata nikimuona anakuja leo na huyu anko, kesho anko mwingine, kesho huyu anko mwingine. She's never there for me. Unaona? She doesn't have that information. So when we started advocating, they were raising their voices. Like I have a friend, she's called Atingisa. She was even beaten because alitoa mimba. And she was asking the community, Masi, nimetoa mimba ni yangu. Watanilelea? Mimi mwenyewe maisha imenishinda, mimi mamangu nikalewa, mimi mwenyewe sijielewi. Mwenye amenipea mimba anashindaga amenipiga. Ananipiga. Unasikia? Ananipiga hata ajui nimeoga, ajui nini, yeye ni kunipiga tu na kunitumia vibaya. Sasa nimetoa mimba. Walileta mpaka hiyo fita. Sasa lazima hata Masi sijui kama ni yangu ama si yangu. Juu nilionekana na mimba na kesho yake sikukuwa nayo. aliniramba. Watu wakutaka kujua, they were judgmental. Huyu ni muuaji sijui nini. And nilikuwa pa shule yake because I've experienced that. It's so painful. You want someone to talk to and you cannot get that person who you trust. Benye huyo amesema. Utamwambia ambia ule. Sinaenda hivyo. Umtetee tukakuwa wauaji wawili. Mnajuana mavilemba. And I was like, it's okay, we get through. You'll get through this. So I had to connect her to Doris, seriously. So Doris talked to her, and at least now her mental health is stable. And now she's also advocating. Hata tukifa wauaji, we don't care. There is safe abortion.
Yes.
Hata waende for safe abortion. We don't want to lose lives.
Oh, yeah.
It's better tuende safe abortion badala kwa makwas. Juu tutazidi kukufa. If we can have access to that safe abortion, hata tuiende nayo.
Thank you. So women and girls need access to safe abortion services. And for them to be able to make that choice for them, let them decide what they want to do with their own bodies. That was what I'm hearing Masi anasema. Mwili ni yetu, watatufanya na venye tunataka. Sawa? So I want to open it up. Is there anybody with a question or a comment to my panelists?
Hi, everyone. So mine isn't really a question. It's more of something that Niva said about her journey in discovering her menses and going through that process. So for me, growing up, ilikuwa wakati wa simu ya jamii, nani ushago. And I was raised by my grandparents. And I started in class 5. Yes. My mom is in Nairobi. I live with my grandparents, and they are the most traditional people you'll ever find. I couldn't talk to my grandparents about it. I couldn't talk to my teachers in school. Nimetolewa Nairobi, nimeenda kupelekwa shule ushago. Hata kuongelesha huyo mwalimu subject wise ilikuwa already ni issue. So how exactly are you supposed to start a conversation na yeye? So I borrowed from my grandmother 10 shillings. Nikalipa simu ya jamii. Ndio nipigie mamangu akiwa Nairobi, apigiwe aambiwe enda kwa simu ya jamii fulani at this and this time your daughter wants to talk to you. That was the first time. That was to make an appointment, so to speak, with my mom. So that she is close to where the phone is. Ndio sasa nikipiga tena, yeye ndio ataireceive. Kidogo, the following day tena nikaambia shoshosi, unisaidie na 10 bob ingine nataka kununua something for school. Akanipea. Ndio sasa nikaongea na mama. My mom is the one who took me. And that call didn't even last a minute. Back then, your 10 bob ilikuwa inaongea 1 minute and a few seconds.
Gen Z, I'm telling you, so it's fine, it's okay. I'm out here, just like, okay.
How easy, understand? So she, and even then, there was no transport. So alichukua ile basi ilikuwa inatoka Nairobi, moja, ya 7 a.m. in the morning, akuje anione in school, ndio aniletee pads, so that I can have something to use. Like, literally, that is how I learned how to deal with my menses. It was such a trauma because for those 2 days, nilikuwa nashinda nikiangalia dress hivi nisikuwe nimemes before she came. Sasa ndio akakuja kaniletea, and then ikarudi kafika kwa shosho yangu. Shosho yangu na kaanza kunifanya nini? Kunigombeza. Why didn't you come to me? How?
Thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
For those who came in late, my name is Nyambura. So, first is a comment. Thank you for sharing your stories. They really made me think about a lot of things, because in a conversation tunaonanga ni kama tu it's easy for everyone. And I'm like, yeah, Mimi, my experience nikianza period was fucked up. So my question is, especially to you, age nako ni ngumu, I can't
Never. Like,
Yeah.
never mwendo, but I come.
So
It's a long story.
you mentioned how it was hard for you when you started your menses because you didn't have someone to talk to and you were with your brother. And kuna point ilifika ukasema if your parents wakasikia kitu yenye unafanya huku nje, it would be chaotic. So does that mean that, you know, your parents are not aware of the work that you're doing? Ama do you have to sugarcoat it when you are with them? How do you package that information? You know, wamekuja wamekuuliza, so huku nje unaongelea nini? And then also to the entire panelists. SRHR nowadays imekuwa reduced to abortion, something that nimeona hadi online. So how do you maneuver when you're in the community? Umesema, I want us to talk about sexual reproductive health, and everyone wants to bash you or something. So how do you maneuver telling them, there's more to SRHR, it's not just about abortion. How do you maneuver that?
Okay, thank you. Is there another question so they can answer the first round?
Mine is also a comment. I work with girls from street in Dagoretti, and there was a case of them throwing fetus around. Every other day you wake up and you get fetus around. So one day the OCS called me and told me, malaya wako wanaua sana. So apparently I told him, nani amekuambia ni malaya wanaua? Malaya anajua kutumia condom na anajua kutumia protection. You know, a way of cleaning your name out of it. Nikaambia kitu cha maana tunafaa kufanya ni tuite baraza. Apparently he bought the idea of calling baraza. But now the question was, I'm known, I had a bad history of getting babies and losing babies. Now again you're telling people, mtu wote kabla atoe mimba ama anataka kutoa mimba ni vizuri anione. So you can imagine, because you've been called, yeah? And these are very young girls. We've lost several who have done the same and died. We've done 2 vigil. Now I stand there and everyone is looking at me, and somebody said, I've been the loudest voice, ndio maana watoto wako wanakufa wewe muuaji. You can imagine. Luckily enough, the God, sometimes we believe with this God, he does his own things. This lady, the daughter, got pregnant when she's 9 years. Now she comes back to me and she's like, ile kitu ulisema, now I was like, twende tu kwa OCS, uliniita muuaji, si ndio? Because either the way you'll help the daughter, but it is good sometimes to make the community know we are not advocating for safe abortion. But what is the need? As we are not telling them to get pregnancy so that we can terminate. As we are telling them there's a method we can do to avoid throwing fetus around. And I know it's not easy. I can imagine someone who lives in Kibra. If anything happens, no unajulikana anasemaga wale wawa. We are known. Me, I'm called Mama Malaya. And sometimes they even wonder how I manage my marriage. Somebody told my husband, unajua bibi yako hata hawa watoto uko nao ni vizuri ufanye DNA. It's a great work, and I believe we need to move on the fire and spread more. We need to get more energy. As much as we are called names, it is better for us to tell them the truth than allowing fetus to be thrown. You can imagine you're walking on the street of Kawangware. We have dumping sites. Those ones who come those areas will tell you. So many dumping sites. Unapata dogi kikula fetus. Then you're like, hisi ni mguu ya mtoto. And tomorrow I was telling OCS, as much as utaniambia, tuite kikao. Tutaita kikao mbili tatu. Can we just talk in a chief baraza? Everybody to know this is a disaster in Dagoretti. Thump up divas, girls, and let's continue doing the great job.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for this chance. Thank you for sharing your stories. Ziko motivational sana. And for Mercy, sisikia ati hiyo stories za watu. Sex work is work. That's what I believe. Sex work is work. And the community should not be judgmental, because before you judge someone, listen to their stories. Why they decided to do whatever they are doing, why they decided to be whatever they are, you should not judge. So my question goes to the issues of safe abortion. I happen to be in a certain space with the decision makers where there were doctors, State Department of Gender. We were creating SRHR messages. But they were like, this SRHR messages, kama iko na story na contraception, kama iko na story na sex, kama iko na story ya nini, it should be limited to 19 years and above. 18 years and below, those are children, they are protected under Children Act, nini. Then I was like, okay, tunasema hivyo because of the Children's Act na kila kitu, lakini kwa ground vitu ni different. These people are active, they are sexually active. Na some of them are even dying because of doing unsafe abortion. Watoto wamezaa, hata nyinyi mnaona teenage pregnancy, ziko 15 years, 16 years, 13 years, and then mnatusomea mpaka mwingine alinisomea, you don't know the act. Ati, kufunza mtoto about sex education, me was advocating for comprehensive sex education. Ati kuambia mtoto about sex, hiyo ni kuharibu mtoto, sijui mtoto wako about na Children's Act, so muniambie the policies. I just know I just want to know hizi policies zina affectaje mtoto wako kwa ground, because mtu wa state department atanisomea mahali ati ukiambia mtoto about sex under 18 hiyo ni kuexpose mtoto kwa sexual nini, na mtoto hafai kujua story ya sex. The second thing nikauliza daktari mko kwa hizi public hospitals zetu, kwa clinic mnaona watoto 15 years 13 years 17 years wanakuja clinic. Nyinyi mtoto maybe unaona amepata mimba na ni mtoto, because ninasema mtoto has no consent kupata mimba, sijui ni story na defilement, mtoto haizi to consent, that's according to the law. Mtoto amekuja 17 years 16 years, vile mnasema wengine wawezi ongelesha wazazi because of wazazi pia ni wakali, religion, values and beliefs, they should not talk about sex. Vile Masi amesema mtoto amekuja kwa hospitali, amesema nataka story na contraception, what will you do? Daktari anasema my hands are tied, siwezi mpea, lazima akuje na maybe mzazi ama somebody kama sijui ni shule, sijui somebody like really, na mtoto anataka privacy, confidentiality, mama yake haizi kubali vitu kama hizo. How do you maneuver around it? How do you go about it? Because mdaktari pia anasema hands imeninia ako tied. Muna manuvaje na hizi policies zetu za Kenya zenye zinafaa zistrengtheniwe, hazifanywi, they're not implemented. Zenye hazifai kuimplementiwa ndio wanatuletea issues huku. The moment wanatukazia huku watoto wanakuja kuumia hii side. How do you go about it with the under 18?
Thank you very much. So briefly, we'll respond to the different questions that they've answered. We have another round of questions, so if you can stick your response to a minute, that would be great.
Let me answer Mama County over here. So, Mama County, as for me, I'm really grateful that the adolescents and the parents that we have been sharing the message are very supportive. Like one came to me and said, Mercy, you are a victim of unsafe abortion. So the way I'm seeing this, my daughter, she's sexually active. Although I don't want to face her because she's close to you. So can you please call her, or in your next session, can you please talk about contraceptives to see if it will bring her interest. So we had the session and the girls were like discussing, people were giving different opinions. And to my surprise, they said, hey, si afadhali mtu aende contraceptive kuliko kutoatoa mimba ovyo ovyo. Juu hata hiyo safe abortion ikitishwa ngirimbao na hata school fees imeshinda mamako kulipa. So that interest came. And I thank God in Kibera now there are youth-friendly services. There's that doctor who they are free to go to. Yeah? Who inspires them. Unajua pia madaktari wanakuwaga na issue. Unaona? Utapata mtu amekosana na bwana yake usiku mzima akufukuza kwa hospitali. But me I thank God my girls watakoria we tupe contraceptive batch.
Shinda zako peleka huko.
Mimi nipe contraceptive kujia contraceptive nipe. Na naomba sasa ukiwa umedunga shindano na bado uko sexual active, you can get also STIs and STDs. So unafukwe na kodo. Wakaniambia Masi kutoka prepare mali kwa class. Tunataka tuwetenge kwa kodo hapo. Mali tukifanya hivi hakuna mwenye anatuona. Nikamwambia there's nothing bad ku access kitu yenye inakusaidia wewe. You are protecting yourself. You are protecting yourself. You are not protecting your neighbor. If your neighbor has a problem with it, akude chukue ama aniface.
Okay.
Najibu Mama County kwa hapo kwa policies. Policies ziko recently, I think 2 months ago, walikuwa na review consent za msichana kama nataka either contraceptive, kupimwa HIV, yani kwa access to hizi services zote, it's 15 years and above without consent. Mtoto wa 15 years akitaka family planning venye iko reviewed, nilikuwa na pita na Kaylin, tulikuwa tunapitia hiyo nini anaruhusiwa. So we were also trying, sisi ndio tuko ground, that's why niliitwa. Mimi najua mtoto wa 10 years ana have sex huko nje, mtoto wa 9 years siku hizi anabeba mimba. So that's why they called us asking us, is 15 okay with you? Si tukakataa, tukarudisha 13. So bado 13 tujaambiwa imeenda imefika wapi. But at the moment si tunajua ni 15. You can access that services. The other thing, venye umesema msichana kupata service, juu sahi mimi ni kama link kiplani. Haina haja atoke aende kwa CHP. CHP anajua mama yake, anajua watu wote anatembeanga na wao, anajua kila mtu, na kuna mimi nawambianga ni mimi na wewe unless wewe utoe, mimi sitatoa. She knows mimi na hakuna mtu anajuanga mimi naweza peleka abortion. It's between me and her. After hapo mimi nasahau, yeye anasahau. Hiyo confidential between me. Nataka i-maintain ndio at least tusaidie watu wengi kwa community. Haina haja leo na kusaidia na nazunguka nayo kwa community. Hiyo na kuua wewe, si hivyo? So they wananichukuanga mimi kama CHP wao kiplani. Mtu anakupigia na kuambia mimi nataka shindano ya miezi 3. Then it's me now who will go with them. So nani ni mimi? Mimi hakuna mtu atasimama niulize ulikuwa na msema unataka kufanya naye nini? Inamhusu nini? Exactly. So hiyo trust nimebuild nao mapia imesaidia sana. Yeah.
I want to answer. Please remind me your name. Nyambura. Do my parents know? Now, as I have said, huwezi peleka beliefs zako kwa mtu, you slap them on the face with them. So, I wear t-shirts around the house. Mwili wangu, chaguo langu. Call your Aunt Jane. We are easing into the situation. Purity. We ease into the situation. Mpaka hata I get t-shirts and I give my mom. So my mom ajui anatembea na kitambaa imeandikwa call your Auntie Jane. So we ease into the situation, and I'm hoping, okay, about menses and everything else, we are on the right track. But in terms of abortion, kidogo noma, but tutafika, yeah. Hiyo story ya SRH issues, anchoring sana on abortion. First of all, we have to think of it as sexuality. Sexuality is not sex. It's a person, it's a body, and it's a relationship with you and other people, yeah? So when you're talking about SRH issues, you have to ease in. You start with things like menses, GBV, before you reach the mother of them all, who is abortion. Yes? So you ease into the conversation, and then it flows. By the time wanamaliza, washajua, there are places like safe abortions. But again, Mimi, as a millennial and as a mom, to be honest, I really advocate for abstinence. I do. When we are talking about sex, I'm not telling you to have sex. I'm just giving you a safety net to lie on. Vitu zikiharibika, kumedhuka, kuna mahali unaweza enda ujifiche. But otherwise, I want you to be confident, stand by your no and say no and have sex when you're ready and when you understand the consequences of you having sex.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. We had 3 people who had questions. Please stick to under 30 seconds with your question and tell us who exactly you're addressing your question to.
Like, how do we maneuver in terms of language, starting this conversation, and how do we value clarify their attitude and transform them so that they can, these religious elders and gatekeepers, I know we have value clarification and attitude transformation sessions. However, how do we contextualize that thing venye tunaiona hapa kwa ground? Thank you.
When you're addressing issues about sexual reproductive health rights, and when you are talking about advocacy, how do you package that that topic or that sessions to each and every person who's there to listen, so that they can understand that what is abortion, what is GBV, what is, let's say, sexual reproductive health in general.
So I said, my name is Daniel. You know me anyway. I would love to hear your perspective as it regards men involvement. What position have men played in your journey, so that we paint a perspective of how the society is from both angles, even as much as we are looking to bring out the aspect that women and girls need to make their own choices as it regards matters abortion. Yeah.
First, the language, you know, when you are with the adolescent, you nili walisema ukienda kwa kanisa utafanya kenye wanafanya. Na ukienda mosque hautapiga makofi, utainama. So when I'm with the adolescent, I speak the same language they can understand. Hata Shen tutaongea, I'll call myself the way they call themselves. Wakijita Bwangi, hata mimi Bwangi mwenzenyu. So, and we don't have the sessions with them alone. There are times we call also their parents. So you know, when you are with their parents, it's a little trickier because some will not speak. Hey, kama mamangu ako hapa, tabidi ni play ule cool kid, sindio? So, mostly, they are the ones who tell me, Masi, today tuongelele LGBT, tumongelele abortion sana. Ama Masi, leo tuongelele contraceptive. Unaona? They will tell you, ama Masi, leo tuongelele mental health. Unaona? Tunataka kujua ni nini, tulisikia mental health. Unaona? So, when they tell you earlier, you know you prepare.
Okay.
You prepare. Unasema leo tu alao tutongo alisema unataka kufanya nini? Kuongea. But I thank God when with their parents, they open up. Wanaambia mamangu, umesikia shangi. Kama mngekutana na Masi, nani angekuwa anatuambia? Unaona, so wazazi pia kuna jika kwa hiyo shoes.
Okay, thank you so much.
In maneuvering in terms of language, I'm sure Masi has covered a big part. But then again, I think we have to understand that when I'm a writer, and when I'm writing, I usually put myself in a girl in Turkana. Or have you been on a way to Mombasa and there's like a no man's land hapo, and unaangalia unashanga, huyu mtu anaenda shopping center wapi? Like kanyumba kako hapa and there is nothing. It's nothing. So when I'm writing, I want to ni nini itafikia huyu mtu. And most of the time now we have to look at print media. At the end of the day, najua majenzi ya mtaelewa hizi vitu. Lakini gazeti ile ya Sunday Nation, there was a pamphlet there for always. Kalikuwa kanapitishwa hivi. So I think for those girls that cannot access that, and then the vernacular radios, they really come to play. But so najua pia it's a bit tricky, but yeah. Daniel, about the main involvement, I am happy you asked. But kwa sababu, I know when you talk about GBV and SPGV, they're like, sasa tena, kwani wa feminist wanataka nini? It's not about you. It's not a competition. First of all, it's not a competition. Number two, we are doing this because the number of GBV is higher in female than male. Yeah? Yeah, that is why we have voices. So what I can say is CSC is a great, nini, I'm saying, kunja samaki angani beach. Yeah? Gender equality, consensual things, healthy relationships, teaching young boys. But then again, for you men, when you're mesha koma, mtavunjika tukiwa nini? But then you talk to, Juniata nikiangalia hapa, the men that are here, you know 5 other men, yeah? And those 5 other men know 5 other men. So you instill that kind of, bana, si lazima upige mtu ndo ukue mwanaume, si lazima. Hii kitu ukiondokea actually unaka, a bit vague and people are like, oh yeah. So yeah.
Okay, so men, talk to your fellow men. Thank you.
The question for Daniel, kuna mahali nikiongea, I said when a girl akuna hiyo mimba and hajapata consent from a man, we have to include a man. Maybe mwanaume ataweza responsibility. Si already nishamu include. Yeah. Kando na hiyo, as for Mukuru, any session sisi hatuna ubaguzi. Tunaita mwanaume yote mwenye ana support kazi ya wanawake. Umesikia? So we involve them. I don't know the other areas, but for us Mukuru, utapata anything unless strictly maybe kitu kama young mothers peke yao. Tunadili tuna young mothers sasa. Siku tunataka wenye waliwapea mimba mababa za watoto, tunawaitanga. So we involve them all. Na kitu ingine hapo kwa language utapata mimi sometimes kengi ya Mukuru na nishida na nakaa Mukuru. Wana change. Umejua leo hii, kesho asubuhi wako na mpya. So you find it difficult, unaongea tu Kiswahili lakini unawaambia mimi kuna mahali wakati mtakuwa mnauliza maswali. You see Masi, wakati Masi alisema atam mulielezewa maana. So unapata pia mimi nakuwa na learn new language from them. And the other thing pia tunawataka sana nyi wanaume, sana sana sekta yangu ya safe abortion. Nawataka sana ndio mkihave abortion tafadhali mkihave sex mtumie tu condom. Ama we encourage yo msichana aende family planning. Nawataka sana.
Thank you, MJ. Anita?
Okay. I'm supposed to comment on the question about language, right?
Yeah, you can talk about language and a little bit about how your organization is integrating men within your programs or how you are involving them in the work that you do, if you are.
Yes, we actually do. So our name actually is Women Empower and Mentor All. So all means that we have speaker men who can advocate for our issues the same way. So on language, I wanted to say that we take a rights-based approach when talking to maybe religious or duty bearers. Take a rights-based approach and put people first. Let us humanize our problems first. Before you're talking about abortion or even access to services, we are human beings. So mostly we try and use a rights-based approach, humanizing every person, because the law says that we should all have access to, we should all have access to health services, And then another one I'd say is we should be culturally and religiously sensitive to these things. And we realize that when you go to duty bearers or religious people, let's not force these things on them. Rather, let us pray and... Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay. So, okay, I was talking about cultural sensitivity. So we try and we have taken time to try and learn different cultures that exist in our country right now. But we're majorly focused in Kisumu, which is the western part, which is highly Luya, Ruo, and it is a bit patriarchal. So what we do is we try to understand the nature of the culture that exists already. And this side, it is a bit patriarchal. That is why we decided to include men in our advocacy. And then another one is we use assertive communication. Assertive communication does not mean that you're aggressive or passive about what it is that you want. Rather, we address our issues using evidence. Storytelling ni evidence that kuna mtu mahali anaumia. Tell a partner, wewe umesema wewe ni tumishi wa Mungu na Mungu anaita kila mtu, kuna mtu papa anaumia, what is your opinion? So we realize that we use a person-centered approach. It is easier to get things, it is easier to document our issues and tell people what it is that we want.
Okay. Thank you so much, Anita. And this has been a very important and beautiful conversation. I know we have questions, we have comments, but probably we can continue with the conversation over tea. To my panelists, thank you so much for your insights and your thoughts and for feeling comfortable with sharing your stories. For the audience, you've been very engaging and I really, really appreciate it. So this is the end of the panel discussion. Thank you so much. A round of applause for my panelists. A round of applause for me. Over to you. Thank you.
So thank you so much for having me here. I'm going to speak about policies around SRHR. And the reason it's fundamental, even in the morning as we were listening, I think one of the things that came out hugely was how we have policies and how these policies either affect negatively or positively the work that we do in the grassroots. Even before you understand the laws and policies in your country, you have to understand how these laws affect you. And so when it's affecting a first world country like America like that, you can imagine how it trickles down to a country like Kenya, where sometimes I hear people saying, in Kenya, abortion is legal under specific circumstances. It's not legal unless it's medically, prescribed. And the only time a doctor will prescribe an abortion is if you're already having a miscarriage or you have a life-threatening condition. That's the only time. They never consider many other things. There's things like, mental health. There's things like financial capability to take care of a child and yourself. There's things like not having a support system, because having a child is not a thing you want to do alone and in isolation, right? But laws like rovers is when they're overturned, they make it more difficult to access these rights, for policies that we have in place to work. So even as we have, for example, I know not long ago, Mary Stopes was going through a very difficult time because thanks to changing of rovers as well, the people are trying to remove them from the country. But because Mary Stopes is in collaboration with the who is who of the government, that's how they were able to stay. But if you ask people who interact with Mary Stopes, they'll tell you since they stayed, their services have become more expensive. They're less accessible unless you know people that you can talk to. And we can't all wait until we know someone. What if you're in crisis and you know no one? Are you not going to get help and all that? And so that's one of the ways in which you can look into how laws are causing the shrinking of civic space and how that is affecting access to SRH services. Also note that Donald Trump is the one that started the journey of overturning rovers as well. The worst thing is he's already back. So he started the journey, he left, the journey matured, now he's back to implement what he wanted to implement. So I don't think we all are ready for what is about to happen. Funding is going to dwindle down significantly. It will be impossible to do work without money because most of the time people always say, but we can still do the work without money. Okay, can I call you for a baraza without giving you transport? Can I? No, I can't, because maybe that transport is what you need to put some money together and have food on the table, right? So I can't call you to come discuss about SRH without money. I can't bring a population of, say, for example, teenage mothers to teach them about, family planning and contraception and all that without having a policy in place that ensures there is one, access to resources, but also there's access to these services that we say we need with regards to SRH. And so it's very important to open your mind up with regards to the international laws in place. Roe versus Wade is just one of them, but there's so many laws that are in place internationally that affect how things are done in countries like Kenya and other countries that rely highly on donor funding for human rights work. And then we have on how to better mobilize allies and organizations to build collective pressure for progressive SRH policies. As the word suggests, collective, we have no option than to work together. Most of the time within the movement, people look at the work they do as competition. If Mary-Liz is doing some work, I want to know how I can do better than Rita. I'm competing with Rita. We forget our competition is the same and it's not each other, right? We're all fighting the government. You've seen how SRH services have been affected after William Samoei Ruto became the president. Now we have Srhr in place. Has anyone here used Srhr? Anyone? You two have used, and you? Did it work? Now you see how unrealistic those processes are. Because she needs surgery, she has cervical cancer, but she has to wait 3 months for approval, 2 weeks for another admission approval. Srhr approval. When you're going, I know you don't know, but when you have to get NHIF to serve you, there has to be approval. If you just go as a citizen of this country, I promise you it won't serve you. So you can either go through your doctor. So if you have a doctor that is treating you, indulge the doctor to use, of course, the doctor doesn't have to use networks because the doctor just has to say, I have a patient and I need this approval. It still takes time, but still, it's not the same. So already NHIF was not necessarily working for everybody. Because I remember in 2022 when I was getting my surgery, I had to pay an extra year and then I had to wait for approval. And my approval came the evening before I was admitted. I was just gambling. I was like, So that's the thing we are speaking about. When we are saying collective, it means we really have to work collectively. We no longer have the luxury to begin saying, oh, I like this government because it does ABCD for me. Because in the grand scheme of things, everyone else, nobody else is benefiting from this government. There's things that Ruto has done. Srhr is one example. You saw there's an MCA who died, is it from Muranga, I think, who died not long ago. This is an MCA, and still his Srhr could not work. He was at Karen Hospital. But not only that, they were trying to exploit Kenyans because they were saying they're doing a fundraiser for what, 40 million. But his hospital bills were only 4 million. Where was 36 million going to go? Luckily, he died 2 days before the fundraiser. He died 2 days. I'm not mad when politicians who are keeping quiet when bad laws are being put in place. I can't be mad. I cannot be bad about, because if he didn't die on Wednesday, on Friday, a lot of Kenyans would have chucked money to Chanka for their MCA, right? And so when we say it's collective effort, here we are meaning there's so many organizations, for example, just in Kibra who work on SRH, so many organizations in Madare who work on SRH, so many organizations in Dandora who work on SRH. We have responsibility to collaborate within areas of jurisdiction, and then we have responsibility to collaborate from different parts of the country. Like if Dandora, Madare, and Kibra came together and came up with a policy where they're saying people living in informal settlements have these demands with regards to SRH, you think it will be easier to pursue it that way, because everyone then is speaking in the same voice. But as long as we continue seeing each other as competition and who else to fight and how do I become the one that is doing the most work, you cannot do the work alone. Because right now, if I ask you, do you have resources to table a petition for Srhr, for example? You don't. It requires a lot of money to table a petition. It requires a lot of money. It requires a lot of people to come together. It requires signatures. It requires all those things. If you calculate properly and put Madare, Dandora, Kibra, Mukuru together, I'm sure you'll have more than 1 million people. And when you have more than 1 million people, it's easier for you to table that. But the more you have more people, the more you are in closer proximity to leaders that can enable that petition to pass. Because a petition is just a petition. We saw what Ruto did. We are saying Ruto must go. Who ended up going? And Ruto is still there, right? They know how to play their cards. So we also have to learn to work together. Policies included. Earlier I was listening to when Mama County was speaking about, the Children's Act. And it's very, very important to know the details of the Children's Act, because in the grand scheme of things, the same child who is below the age of 18, who will be defiled and get pregnant, because most of the time they're not having sex with their peers, they're having sex with it's older people. So that is defilement. The same society that is okay with kids being defiled is the same society that is not okay with those kids accessing contraceptives. And so it's a very murky ground. When you're beginning to say, for example, whatever is happening is wrong, this kid must access contraceptives, they'll counter you with, but this is just a child. But the person who slept with the child also knew it's a child. We're in a society that is not ready to protect children, but not ready either to provide SRH services. And so there's many problems that we are juggling all at once, so we don't have the luxury to not work together. So the collectiveness can't start from the global, and there's part where I'll speak about the global, the lessons we can borrow from the global and all that kind of stuff. But you have to sweep your house first before you invite guests. Otherwise, guests will come and they'll not stay long, and you'll not do whatever you wanted to do with those guests. But if you keep your house clean, if you have things in order, guests will come and guests will be happy to be here. Guests will be happy to work here and all that kind of stuff. If funding comes today, what will you do with it if you're not organized? If you don't know the issues that are affecting, the community with regards to access to safe abortion, LGBTIQ rights, and all that, you have to know all that information. And then on engaging policymakers, we have to be careful who we choose as policymakers. We no longer have the luxury to continue making the mistakes Kenya and America and other parts of the world are making. Because if you vote for a leader like Ruto, policies are not going to make it. Right now, we are tackling the issue of end femicide. Femicide is an SRH issue. And the reason we keep on fighting is because even since we started fighting, even the many times you've had your president come out to speak remotely about it, have you heard him mention femicide? Have you heard him acknowledge that the killing of women is intentional and it's femicide? He wants to do that because he knows what he is doing. Sometimes all you need is a leader that acknowledges a problem for what it is. And he has not done that intentionally. Now we have 100 million shillings going around. Do you think that money was for you or for me? That money is for political leaders. They're going to steal all that money. And they're going to tell us they're doing something. That's why you see a lot more leaders are talking about femicide now. Because they know 100 million is there. There are better ways to have. When we did the protest in January, we did demands. We had around 17 demands. Demands are a way to tell you, people are telling you, if you want to solve this problem, this is how you go about it. The government has not paid attention to any of that. There's a reason why it has not paid attention to that. It's a constant reminder that they're not our friends, they're not working with us. And we have to begin to identify how then can we be able to set a stronger foundation with regards to sexual and reproductive health rights and services in Kenya without relying on policymakers that don't work for us. We established women reps don't work for us. We established having women in leadership doesn't necessarily mean women issues will be solved. So then what's the other channel we can use that works best? Because we can't pretend that we have no crisis when it comes to SRH, right? There's a big crisis. And then when it comes to lessons, there's so much we can learn. America just taught us why voting bad leaders is not a good thing. We taught ourselves why voting bad leaders is not a good thing. But also, constantly, we are teaching ourselves the power of being part of international law that protects different populations. For example, during generation equality, when Ruto was still the president, Uhuru was still the president, he signed a policy demanding gender-based violence in 2026. When is 2026? In 2 years, right? Part of that agreement that he signed was to ratify ILO C190. ILO C190 is a convention that protects people in the world of work. Women have been victims of femicide, going to work while coming from work while in work, right? But also a lot of queer people continue to face discrimination and blackmail in their workplaces. International Labor Organization came up with this law so that they can make countries that ratify the law, the convention, are able to benefit from that. It's when any crime is committed against a person, even if it cannot be judged in the local court, because we have ratified it, international court and everything, and all those international mercenaries can come in to support and protect these populations. But we've not signed it until today. Uhuru went, now we have Ruto. You think Ruto will sign it? Just in all honesty, you think Ruto will sign it? Ruto won't sign it. So not only do we have a long way to go, but we have things that are pending that we are not doing and that. And so when we speak about lessons, then we have to ask ourselves, in the last, for example, 5 years, what have you learned about SRH? What was good back then and is no longer good, and what was very bad that has become better? Do the pro and cons list. A lot of things are not working currently because of so many things. Because of the elections we had in 2022, because of the leaders that now we have in place, but because of everything that is happening, because there's a lot of looting happening, there's a lot of debt happening. The more a country is in debt, the more it's incapable to offer services to its people. And on top of all services a human being would require, it's SRH services. Because you become sick at some point, right? You will need to go to the hospital. You will need treatment. You will need services, access to safe abortion. The reason access to abortion is important is because we are living in a country where there's so much, sexual abuse happening. There is rape, there is defilement, there's so much that is happening, and killing of women. And the few women that are being killed, their bodies are being mutilated, are the same women that require these services. We have an agency, safe abortion. It will not be approved. Why? You know why we don't have safe abortion until today? Because there are doctors who are already. The sad thing is that we don't know. We are already told it's illegal, so we are scared to go to these places. But there are places you can be able to go and get these services in the most healthiest of ways. You are advised, and government is busy giving these places licenses. But they give them licenses while they charge them a lot of money. That's why they can't change the law, so that they continue to siphon money from citizens and people who want to do good for the society. So then how do we work on reversing that? I think I'll stop there, and then if you have any question, feel free to ask and I'll be happy to answer.
Marilise has spoken a lot about the growing opposition. We've also spoken about issues of fundraising and how funding is shrinking and all that happening. But then in the midst of this is us who believe in the rights. So how do we sustain this movement? That's the biggest question we need to ask ourselves. And I had a number of
suggestions on sustaining opportunities and challenges. And the first one, Merrily spoke about funding. I am thinking about funding in a different way. In my opinion, when we would say that the opposition have a lot of money, but we have money. We have resources. I am not for the narrative that we are poor, that we, the people who believe in gender, pro-choice narrative are poor. The question is, how do we use this money? And allow me to give a story. In 2021, in Korogosho, of course, we grew up with a lot of narratives. Watu wa Mkuru, Kibera, story ya watu kukufa is a normal thing. But it's a normal thing. Watu na kutolewa nini rowe. Fetuses kutolewa rowe ni vitu za kawaida. Si ni ukweli? Hizo ni vitu zina happen kila siku. I go to a salon, I am told a girl has died. It's December. And of course, I'm always disturbed, but at some point, you learn to be helpless. And you're like, it may happen, it happened tena. But then this time round, I am disturbed and I feel like, can we do something? Can we do something about this? And so I speak to a few young people. I speak to one young person, a boy, a male person, and I tell him, unajua msee ameuliwa hapa. Ananiambia, wewe unasema ameuliwa. Now, by the way, they died from an unsafe abortion, and then they had not died because they were in pain. The husband beat her to death. So you can imagine how painful it was. And so I tell that boy that story, and I'm like, if I could happen hivi. And they tell me, wewe unasema hivyo na kuna dem amepigwa na nyundo jana pia. The same village. And I'm like, can we do something? And then we say, me, I was like, I have only 5,000 bob. Sina pesa ingine. And he says, your 5K, tutatafuta projector. Kuna movie tulikuwa tumeshoot before, but we didn't have money. So could we use that movie and then to mourn ude malipas? Because hata watu wachangi. Watu wa mtaa, you know that. Mtu akikufa mambo ya abortion story na watu watachanga. So can we use that time to mourn her and respect her? We did that in the most unsafest place in Korogosho. Anyone who knows Karungu? Karungu is where we grew up knowing Wezi Peter. We did that a night vigil at night at Karungu. And we used only 5,000 shillings. How did it happen? Other people joined us. The people wale tunawaogopa waizi ndio walikuja wakatupe security. Wazee wa kijiji walikuwa wanasema wanafanya nini? Hii ni organization gani? It was not an organization. Like hawajatujenga. Hawa hizi wanasema wewe mzee, mtoto wako amepata ball. Mtoto wako alipata ball na bado unaongea utaki tuongelee hizi story. 100 young people came and we did an activity at night in Korogosho. That is the power of 5,000 shillings. The activity was called Sauti Yangu then. When we were registering our organization, we thought, could it be collective? Could it be Sauti Zetu? And that informed Sauti Zetu. And we thought, let it be a network. Should it be specific people? We want to open the network. How do we sustain the abortion movement? We need to open up the space to other people. And it does not mean that we are losing by opening up the space to other people. We're actually gaining so much by opening the space to other people. The movement is growing and it is a positive thing. The issue of funding, what can we do with what we have? Opposition, while we say they have a lot of money, they contribute a lot in churches. They contribute a lot through churches. They have social, what are they called? Social enterprises. How do we convert our work to social enterprises? Right now, we cannot afford to be depending on the global north and all that. If we have Trump in power, how do we continue depending on USAID and all that to give us money? It becomes a problem. So we need to rethink our strategies so that we can generate our own income. And that's why we need to look at what is opposition doing that can help us sustain our work. And that takes us to social media as an opportunity. We are speaking about 16 days of activism, and we cannot separate rights. Rights are interrelated. And at this time, when you're talking about 16 days social media, it is not safe for us on social media. Njeri Wamwigi has had it all. Onyango Otieno has had it all. So we need to rethink, how do we make social media safe for us? Lisa, you're here, and Fahe, we were among the very few people who started talking about abortion confidently on Twitter when trolling was that thing then in 2020. So that one cannot work today. That one will not work on TikTok. That one tuliacha 2020. How do we re-strategize again using the same social media to be more progressive and be more safe for women? I do not get why Florence Wanjiku is in ICU or wherever, like on the, and she's still being shamed. She's bold enough to whistle blow, and many other people. Njeri Wamwigi doing incredible work of saving people. Some of us can't, even me, I can't do that work. But Njeri Wamwigi is being shamed. How do we recreate safe spaces on social media? Citizen journalism is growing, and ilianza kugrow kitambo. Is that an opportunity for us to rethink digital literacy? An opportunity for us to speak about how do we talk about abortion in online spaces, because people are interested to talk about these things. And opening up the space here to sahi. If you not talk about it, mimi niko na followers 1000, nikiongelelea itakuwa na 90 views. Mwenye ako na followers 200,000 atapata attention, na unfortunately hiyo nini itakuwa na even negative impacts. So can we reach out to them and work with them? Kama ni watu wa legacy media, watu wa TV journalists, could we train them? Because right now Kina Nation and everyone else pia wanaenda social media. But sasa ethics za kutumia social media ni gani? Tutakuwa harmed in these platforms. And also thinking about re-strategizing. I was speaking with Marianne and Marianne Lisa, and I was like, tuwezi endeleanga tu kuongelea abortion peke yake in its own. Hatuwezi. That one is a losing battle. There's already a lot of stigma on abortion. Can we start rethinking how we can embrace an intersectionality in our work? What has opposition done? Opposition ndio anawekwa minister of transport and wherever. Ndio wakati wana vote kwa nini mambo ya health, huyu mtu ni already ana support your bill or wherever. Could we rethink of how we do not just stay in the space? Tuende climate change hata. Tuanze kutumia AI. Tuanze kufanya vitu tofauti. Hata tuone watu wengine wanafanya malnutrition. Things that don't, it's not just about, and then now embrace intersectionality. Let's be in those spaces. Tukikuwa kwa hizo spaces, we realize that there are gaps. For example, I have started getting in climate change space, and there's a movement that deals with climate and health. If I look at SRHR policies, hakuna aspect ya climate change. If I look at policies in climate change, hakuna aspect ya SRHR. Aspects za nini, what they are vocal about is malnutrition, mambo ya plastics and everything else, and how health causes pollution and everything else. So that is an opportunity for us to speak about SRHR and tell them, if a woman, if kuna floods, na kama kuna floods, mwanamke anahitaji abortion services, what happens to them? So those are some of the ways I am thinking that we can embrace intersectionality. And then harmonizing efforts. And Mary really spoke about how we are competing with each other. Opposition will always speak the same language, and they are working together. If we continue competing, and our strategies are very different, we can't continue competing with each other. Community voices will not be called because we are a grassroots organization, we can't contribute where. But through our voices, there's a contribution we make that other people cannot make. Through Kaylin, through everyone else, we can work together and transform the entire ecosystem. And that's an opportunity for all of us. See competition, because that has been a gap. Regulations and laws. We've seen in different parts of Africa, different laws being embraced. Uganda, hata huwezi tembea. And they are the same because they are more coordinated. Could we rethink how else can we re-strategize our engagement with policy makers? Mambo ya kuita policy maker kwa space, unamlipa pesa, akae kwa panel. I have a bad example. When we are launching our small office, I called key stakeholders and I did not pay them because I don't think it's my work to pay them. I do not think it is their work to come to my space for us to rethink how we can work together. But if we commercialize our spaces, tunachezewa. I remember some time back during our HNK conference, Kaliti came and did us bad, but they were paid. He was paid. Why should you pay someone for him to do bad things to us? Why should you pay someone who will not transform our space, who does not contribute to us? And the last one, let's work with young people. Gen Zs are transforming political landscape. Can we borrow lessons from the Gen Z movement to the SRHR space and work with young people? They are very powerful. Thank you.
Hello. Hello. Asante. When I was being given this topic on mobilizing and organizing using digital platforms, I was very skeptical. And I asked the ED if this is something that I really should speak in front of well-versed individuals. And the truth of the matter is that we are all well connected today. We are living in a very modern era whereby you wouldn't take a lot of steps before you find someone using a smartphone, using a smartwatch. What else is smart? Yeah. Yeah, so that is the reality. But for me, I feel what I really should dwell so much on is how well we are really protected when we are using these digital platforms. I know in this room we've had individuals who've used these platforms for advocacy specifically. Like my colleague has said, using social media where we have campaigns, we've had interactive webinars, we've engaged influencers who have a big following in the social media platforms. So we all done that. But how well have we protected ourselves from harm? And you realize much of this harm really comes physically. When I was coming in the morning, I was greeted by a well-known fellow to me, but he said, "Niaje jamawa, to each their own," you know. So I was really questioning myself, why is he calling me to each their own? Then I remembered on my Facebook profile, when you visit it publicly, you wouldn't find anything. The only thing you'll find there at the bio, it's to each their own. So he identifies me with that. And now I was coming to speak about this topic. Then I've just remembered that truly, what personal information have I put out there for anyone that sees me? You see, that in itself is protection. You might visit my profile. To get me won't be an easy thing, not unless you hack my IP address. And nowadays we have apps where you can hide your IP address using VPNs. So as an advocate, that's the thing that should really ring in your mind. And how best can you counter the harassments that we face as individuals, especially when you're campaigning online, when you're using these digital platforms? For me, first, I really feel that we should build a very supportive online digital community. The people you can speak to, especially when you don't know how to handle, some aggressiveness from individuals, from even the policymakers that we want to reach. We are well connected. How many individuals here have a Twitter account? Sorry, an X account. It's no longer Twitter. Almost 90%. Yeah? And I think most of you I usually see you online. You would want to work with allies in those spaces that you are in. People who don't really want to speak your language, but can be very supportive in your campaigns, can be very supportive in your movements. And even nowadays, you realize for the individuals who are leading institutions, and we are having a discussion this morning with my colleagues at that table on why people are are feeling threatened when young people are taking leadership positions nowadays in the SRHR space. So now you realize when you're even applying for small grants, they ask you the benefactors, the benefactors, the donors, they ask you to even quote, how best, or rather even just a highlight, if you have a communications department in your institution. And we had this discussion so many years ago whereby our departments in communication were not really appreciated. We felt like they were just a by the way. And we've come a long way. Yeah, we've come a long way up to this very point that we can say our visibility is through what we put on our social media handles, in our social media platforms as institutions. So I also feel there's an important need of proactively countering misinformation. For opposition, which are well funded, like my colleague says, they're up, or that they're out there to ruin you. They're out there to put you down. It's always important to fact check. What are you putting outside there? As an institution, as at your own personal, platforms, what are you saying about what you're doing? And I remember there was a discussion here in the morning. I think it's my colleague Niva was saying the parents don't know what she's doing, right? And you realize for you to even get some penny, which happens, you really need to post some of this work using your own private handles. And it's always out there in the public. But again, when it comes to your house, how do you really explain this to your folks? Leave alone your partner and all. Maybe your partner knows. But how really do you explain to your folks that I'm doing this? I'm advocating for safe abortion. How do I make it make sense to them? So fact checking is very important. And you always use data, verified data, things that you can quote the source, that you've been, I don't want to say booked, you've been brought to the limelight. You're speaking about something that's very sensitive, and we all know most of the topics that you're speaking nowadays on social media are very sensitive topics that you can be able to quote where you found that data, where you found those statistics. And what you realize nowadays is that most of these online platforms, it's very difficult to keep them, because they benefit so much from, financially that is, from ads and all. So you realize even if it's a myth, a misconception, for them they wouldn't mind posting it, because at the end of the day, it's the money that they're getting. So it's very difficult to keep the kind of information that's always out there. But for me, I usually recommend the aspect of always reporting and trying to get feedback from these moderators of these platforms. And of course, something that we always forget as advocates, as feminists, as activists, it's to always have self-care. Even in storytelling, you realize that we've spoken so much about other people's stories, but we haven't really told our own stories. How are we taking care of our mental health as individuals? Because at the end of the day, it's you and you alone. Yes, you might have money, and nowadays money can't buy life. But how best are we taking care of our own selves? So first, we limit our exposure. If it doesn't feel right, then don't do it. Don't push it. Yes, we might look at the aspect of, pocket-wise and all. But trust you me, few years down the line, it won't make even sense to you, your own self. Yeah? And always try to have a support system. The kind of people you interact with at work, at home, those are your people. If they're not speaking your language, then they're not your people. And I know we are very much bracing for a tougher time ahead. And like my colleague Mary said, we are looking forward to the Project 2025. And the kind of politics that's being played between the Republicans and the Democrats in the US. We are going to have defunding of institutions. So I feel, for me, it's really working out to ensure that we have in place strategies that will be relevant when that time comes. That we end up not losing people. We continue working in our own ways, in our own small ways, but of course, not forgetting the aspect of focusing on positivity. Yeah.
So I'm going to speak on religion and SRHR. It's I know, and you're going to do some little exercise. Rita did something and it gave me a very good idea to also do some exercise. But before we do that, the way you've just reacted when I've talked about religion and SRHR, we know it's a very controversial issue, right? We have some religious leaders amongst us. They're young religious leaders. Can we see? Yeah. We have some religious leaders with us. Thank you for coming here. Thank you for coming here today, at least to get to understand what young people go through in all their diversities, especially when it comes to sexual reproductive health and rights. And it's a very thorny issue because when you're talking about religion and SRHR, there's a whole aspect of morality from the religious leaders' side. But for us, we look at it from the aspect of, are we upholding human rights? Because at the end of the day, we are all human beings, right? And we need our rights to be upheld. We need them to be respected, protected, and fulfilled for us to also enjoy living our lives as human beings. I know there's a lot of discussions that has been happening in the SRHR field with regards to religious leaders, opposition, SRHR, even when it comes to policy development, policies and laws. There are really key stakeholders that are normally involved in such processes. Even at the community level, they have so much influence and power over community members, really. Because religious leaders, they talk to a huge crowd, whichever religion it is, whether it's Christianity, Muslim, Hindu, whichever religion. And we tend to listen to what our religious leaders tell us, right? But I believe in this day and age, it's also key for us to just be aware of what's happening on the ground. Mtu alisema asubuhi, nini inafanyika kwa ground, si ndio? Yes, we do respect and we do understand the point of view that the religious leaders have with regards to various issues. But I believe it's also time for us to, instead of even blaming the religious leaders, we have allies actually amongst religious leaders. We have some that are allies. They really support the work we do in SRHR. But to bring more allies to our side from the religious leaders, perhaps it's also time for us to do more of awareness creation. Like you see the discussion we are having here today. Imagine if we had more religious leaders who can also listen in and get to understand what young people are going through and why we are really fighting for progressive SRHR laws and policies. It's not just for the sake. We are not just here to shout and say abortion rights and all that. Like for abortion rights, we're talking about it because we know what happens when people go to access unsafe abortion services from quacks. It's a really sad situation. And for me, the moment it hit me was when, it was a particular year, not so long ago. So I was talking to friends. And in this 1 year, a close friend told me the way she got pregnant while we were in campus. I didn't even know. And her mom took her to procure an abortion. Luckily for her, her mom took her to a safe place to procure an abortion. But it was not her wish, really. But the mom was like, you can't have kids now, you've not graduated. The same year, a friend comes and tells me they procured an abortion. The same year, a cousin comes and tells me she procured an abortion. The same year, another friend comes and tells me that, do you know this close relative of yours has procured an abortion 2 times? I was like, no, what if I lost all these people whom I know, who are close and dear to me, and I'm quiet, I don't really talk about these issues. So for me, it's how can we bring religious leaders to also get to understand some of these issues? I know they rely on doctrines when they're also addressing SRHR issues, but as someone said in the morning, when you're talking about SRHR, it's also not only about abortion. We're looking at maternal health. We're looking at gender-based violence. We are looking at several HIV/AIDS. menstrual health. So it's a whole spectrum. That's why even when we talk about comprehensive sexuality education and we get opposition on it, sometimes we're left wondering then what do people want? You know, because it's not one specific issue. We are not only talking about contraception or family planning, but it's a whole spectrum. Menstrual hygiene, HIV/AIDS. How can our young people ensure that they're safe? Or those who are infected or affected, how can they offer support to their friends, to their families? How can they ensure that they continue living their lives healthily? And of course, this is why we really need religious leaders in our spaces. For them, as they are called upon to influence policies, plans, guidelines, whichever thing, they're also able to be a voice of reason. Yes, there's doctrines. I know most of us here are religious. We go to church, mosque, whichever religion you subscribe to, but also just realizing that kuna situation real kwa ground, sindio? And we need it to be addressed. For CSE, they told us to embrace age-appropriate CSE. We did. We are now trying to push for age-appropriate comprehensive sexuality education because we realize that yes, for sure there's whatever information perhaps you give a 7-year-old or 9, you might not give to an 18-year-old. But then again, today we were being told a 9-year-old gets pregnant. You see? So in such a situation, then you're left wondering, what if this 9-year-old got this information, hangekuwa na hiyo ball, si ndio? Ama maybe ange make a wise decision, angetumia protection, angetumia hata FP. But the moment we turn a blind eye to these issues, then we end up missing the point. So as I conclude my session, because we're also trying to ensure you leave here on time, I just want us to, I know we'll give a chance to the religious leaders to say something, but we acknowledge your point of view. But we also request you so dearly in your spaces to also just be a voice of reason to the issues that we go through with regards to sexual reproductive health and rights. And we also promise to create more awareness, to collaborate with you guys as we address these issues so that it's a collaborative effort and it doesn't feel like it's us pushing you to do something and maybe perhaps you don't have enough information that you require to also advocate for our rights. So maybe just a few people, there's this trend going around that we listen and we don't judge, right? So maybe just a few people can just share a message to religious leaders, not to the ones here. These are our allies. Because for them to be here on a Saturday with us, it clearly shows that they're also interested to learn and get to understand what SRHR issues we go through, right? So maybe just 5 people at most. Just a very brief message. And then all of us, we say we listen and we don't judge. Because it's a journey. We also don't expect the religious leaders to change overnight, especially those who are on the extreme end who don't even want to listen to us. But there's always a room to meet, to discuss, and to reach a common ground, right? So 5 people, after they speak, we just say we listen, we don't judge. That's it. There's 1 here. Who else? There's 2, there's 3, Leila. There's 4, the 5th one. And the Sindani. So we'll give you the mic. I can start here and then it goes round. I have 2 minutes, yeah.
For me, it's ethnicity, race, religion doesn't choose on contraception.
We listen, but we don't judge.
To the religious leaders. Hii mambo ya kuwekelea mtu amerepiwa unwekelea mkono, mtu sijui amekuwa defiled naekelewa mkono, ama queer person naekelewa mkono. Si kila mahali ni shetani. Shetani yako chini, shetani hayuko kwa sisi human beings.
I think let me speak to, I wish there was a Catholic religious leader here, but yeah, I really wish the religious leaders would have a way of getting feedback. I mean, we appreciate that it's good if we sit and then you preach, but can you make it more conversational because we have so much feedback and questions most of the time?
They assume that we don't have sex, but actually we do engage in sexual activity.
We listen, but we don't judge.
I will say this in the voice of a sheikh.
kuoa mke wa nne ni sunna. I need a fourth wife and you do not provide for these wives.
I'm tempted to quote the Bible, but I will refrain. My religious leaders is that, as I've said, when I was a child, I spoke like a child. I did things like a child, but when I matured, things changed. And there's also another Bible verse that says, in the days before I spoke to you through prophets and teachers, but now I speak to you directly. What I'm saying is that time and season changes, and our perspective to things changes also. Let's embrace change.
When I was starting this work, nishaitwa kwa kanisa, time ya youth meeting nikaambiwa mimi nitoa ma-abortion.
We listen, but we don't.
Yeah. So thank you very much. We promise to engage more with religious leaders to address all these issues that are termed controversial, and to really address the key issues or the underlying issues that affect young people, adolescents, and everyone else in all their diversities. Thank you.
I think it's me who's between. Yeah, it's me. It had to be me. So the most interesting thing you need to know is that the first speaker always sets the precedence. The last speaker has their own time. So I'm lucky to be the last speaker. My name is Srhr Kerubo. I am a sexual reproductive health and rights advocate and a gender issues expert, if you'd like, LGBTIQ. I work for Reproductive Health Network Kenya as the communications lead. But in this session, I wear so many hats, but in this session, I stand in as a team lead for inclusivity, diversity, and equity advocacy organization. So my session today is around decriminalization of the LGBTIQ in Kenya. Now, before we begin, I'd like for us, anyone, to tell me what decriminalization means. No wrong or right answer. What do we think decriminalization is?
Adult education.
Sorry?
Safe space.
Yes, I didn't hear what you said. Eti? Elimia. I'm not very good with Kiswahili. All right. Someone else?
Anyone?
I said my session is around decriminalization of the LGBTIQ in Kenya. I asked, who will tell us what decriminalization means? Or what do we think it means? You don't have to be right. You are only telling me what you think it means. Yes, Julie?
I can say in Kenya, being lesbian, gay, it's a crime. So we want it not to be a crime, to be who you are.
Yeah, in so many ways. That is basically what it is. Decriminalization is the process of removing criminal penalties associated with a specific behavior, activity, or identity. But most interestingly, the reason as why I asked for that is we need to know that decriminalization does not mean necessarily that that activity is illegal. Sawa? It doesn't mean that that activity is illegal. So, lesbians, bisexuals, queer people, gender non-conforming folks, trans, they are not illegal people. Am I making sense? All right, so that wasn't part of my conversation today, but it was really important for us to unpack what that means, because most of the time when we hear decriminalization, it's either we are associating it with illegal activities. Something can be rare, but it is not illegal. Something can be abnormal, but not. Natumia, the very same terms we normally use, because abnormal is the LGBTIQ. When you tulienda high school, You understand that term very, very well. Now, you might ask, what are the barriers in Kenya when it comes to decriminalization of the LGBTIQ community? But importantly for us, we need to know that efforts have been put forth in terms of decriminalization for years. Yeah, and reason as to why we've not won that kind of journey, it's because of a few things, and mostly number one is the colonial era laws that we always subscribe to. The second one is, of course, when we are talking about the LGBTIQ community or the LGBTIQ, basically, I've heard most of us saying that it's an African. Is that true? Hello? So wenye tuko hapa ndani hatujaisikia hivyo, hatujaisema hivyo. We don't have people who say that, right? Is that the case? Hello? What did I ask? Yeah, is it an African or an African? Let us hear a few responses to that. A genuine answer, what you think. You don't have to be correct, you don't have to be wrong. What you think.
I think it doesn't have any geographical region dynamic to it, because if it is not African, then how is it that our own traditional and cultural literature shows us that people like that have always been here, even before the Wazungus came?
Yeah, now, what is our own literature? A lot of the literature that we read is borrowed, and a lot of that has been used to brainwash majority of us, because I believe in our cultures, we've seen LGBTIQ people in these communities. Yeah. So when you're talking about a conservative culture, a conservative religion, we need to ask ourselves, where is it coming from? Because again, is religion African? If you were to ask me, I'd tell you no. Because if we borrowed the example, or if you talked to your grandparents, or if you have the great ones, they'll tell you how did religion manifest in them? How did they used to worship? Because I think Mesoma, the river between Mesoma, a lot of literature, and Africans, and a very good example is our impeached. Yes. It constantly speaks about yeah. You see, he had a routine of going to pray in the mountain, and that is the culture we've always talked about as Africans. So in these cultures and in these religions that we've come to subscribe to lately, they have become a barrier in terms of decriminalizing the LGBTIQ issues in this country. Another issue is the political reluctance. If we had good political goodwill, decriminalization would be something that is in the past. But because we do not have goodwill from our political landscape, then we realize that decriminalization is going to be a journey. Another thing is misinformation. And again, misinformation, I'll tie it with the cultural and the religious context we are talking about. When we are saying LGBTIQ or being queer or being a lesbian is Western, it's very interesting. I'd really want to understand how Western is it when it's a Kenyan girl in the village who has not even gotten to a matatu to Nairobi to see what a bit of civilization looks like. But they're a queer person uko ushago. How Western is that? I beg to differ, right? Yeah, these are people who are not far away from you. You realize when religious leaders are really contesting about these issues, and then you take a religious leader and tell them, by the way, unajua, your daughter is my girlfriend. What happens? All of a sudden, the census, they will lose their census. Someone at Ukwa TV, something has happened. It's now it's either a murder or attempted murder. And that is a religious leader. Another barrier I think I'd wanted to share about is the limited legal protections that we have. Again, the limited protections are based on the laws that we subscribe to. Now, we can borrow lessons when we are talking about a lot of barriers. It's not like we do not have things that we can celebrate about. We have different countries that have legalized. For example, being a lesbian in that country is legal. And when you're saying that it's legal to be a lesbian in a country, it means even access to healthcare is very possible. It means you'll wake up one morning, go to a health facility, tell them, I want 1, 2, 3. You'll wake up one morning, panga wedding, a public wedding, and call people. Even the religious leaders who will do what? Who will attend. So you realize how, if something is legalized, the freedom, how that freedom looks like. We have countries like Botswana, which decriminalized homosexuality in 2019. And that made it possible because that was through a progressive court ruling. Another country, I think, that has made a lot of progress is South Africa. Yeah? In that country, being a queer person is not illegal, amongst others. Now, the key takeaways for me, I think, from these lessons we are having, strategic litigation is really key. Because then if you do not have progressive courts in wherever you are at, having to make other milestones will be very difficult. This country, at some point, I felt like we were having progressive courts, but lately, sielewi ni nini na happen, But there was a point it felt like our courts are really progressive, and actually the courts have been, because if then the ruling in the courts said that we have the right to associate, then that is how it feels like to have a court ruling or a court that is very progressive. Another thing for me, I think it's in terms of public education, because ask yourself, for those countries like Botswana, South Africa, for the LGBTIQ to be decriminalized, it's not just a progressive court that did that happen. It meant that people were aware, people were more informed, and there's power in information, because again, in this country, we are saying there's power in misinformation. Hello? There is power in this country of misinformation. People are, day in, day out, are struggling to ensure that you are misinformed. Because I think they dread to see what an empowered person would look like. Because no one wants you to question them on things that they are mandated to do. So for me, I think another thing I wanted to talk about is how can then the legal and the grassroots advocacy efforts be aligned to achieving meaningful change? Because again, I said decriminalization is a journey we've been part of in this country and other countries, in terms of ensuring that our queer people, not only the LGBTIQ, even sex workers, because we're also dealing with decriminalization when it comes to sex work. Now, one thing I think for me, and I think Mary-Liz, Rita have really emphasized, I'd even talk about it while I'm sleeping if someone woke me up one day and asked me, what is the problem? Why are we not making progress? I'd like to be quoted as Fahe at this point, because I think in as much as we are advocates seated here working for different organizations, different programming issues, the opposition are just united for one thing. They're against everything we are doing. But for us, we'll have to put our language, we are always busy putting our language in order, being publicly correct, trying to do all these things. Why would you advocate for contraception, but draw the line when we are talking about safe abortion issues, for example? Yeah? Why are we talking about, you're big on contraception, you're big on safe abortion, but when you remember you're a Christian, and you are at the pulpit, you're the pastor, you draw the line when it comes to the LGBTIQ issues. Meanwhile, the opposition, hawataki LGBTIQ, hawataki abortion, hawataki kila kitu. Yeah? But for us, we are not united. If we had joint strategic points in terms of even planning on these issues, we would have made strides. But now we do not have a joint agenda. Honestly, we will sit here, and I think Rita may release, these are the things we've been dealing with over years and years. We are seated in these rooms, we will come up with strategies. But the moment we walk out here, people will commit, even those commitments on how we commit here. For me, they're null and void because they never make sense. Because we will commit here as a team. When we walk out, kila mtu ameenda shughuli zake. But the opposition, they will commit on one thing and they will run with it. Yeah? So I'd want us to also have an honest conversation as advocates, as EDs who are seated here. What are we doing? Another thing for me, I think, in terms of the legal and grassroots advocacy efforts that we need to do, again, strategic litigation. I think we must appreciate, for the lawyers seated here, strategic litigation most of the time, I think it really comes out based on passion. No one is paying you to be strategic in terms of litigation. I'm thinking when it comes to this work. It takes a lot of work. But if you believe in the cause, like Helene is doing, we will make a lot of strides. Thirdly for me, is capacity building. We cannot have strategic litigation, we cannot have joint agendas if you're not bringing the people we are advocating for in the room. You will not represent the LGBTIQ just because maybe you are a specialist of gender, you are a gender expert, for example, who is not a queer person, but who assumes to understand based on the school that you went to and the masters you have, for example, or the PhD, and want to speak or program or even give solutions for the problems the queer community, for example, is having. Capacity build the people with the problems, because they're the ones who know the solutions for themselves, and they're the ones to give you the advice. It's important to appreciate that it's not like expertise is a wrong thing. It's a very good thing, because you're the people with the money. But you cannot have the money, you cannot have your cake and eat it. If you have the money, trust the communities you want to advocate for to give you the leading, to show you the way. Because your ways, so far, they haven't worked. Collective campaigning. Right now, it's 16 days of activism. Imagine if all efforts were put for all activists or organizations. We have one agenda, we have one hashtag, for example, and we are just talking about 16 days of activism. How powerful will that be? Saizi kila mtu akona shughuli yake. Organization A inatoa millions of, kila huyu anafanya vitu zake. Another thing for me, I think, I'll leave it at that. I'll give an example of efforts that were put together. And I leave that point at that. For example, the case in the Kenyan courts in 2019. It was around the legal efforts to overturn the colonial era. And that is why we're enjoying the rights that we are right now. The second effort that we put together that is more recent is the Ugandan Anti-Homosexuality Act. Most people rallied around that. And it was very, very visible. And it was because people spoke in one language. And they not only speaking in one language must be translated into actionables. Yeah? So if we emulated those two examples, then I think a lot of strides would be made. Now, what is the role of international human rights frameworks in influencing local policy when it comes to the LGBTIQ issues? Now, we have frameworks like the Universal Declaration of Human Rights that advocates for equality, dignity, and freedom from discrimination, framing LGBTIQ rights as human rights. Now, most people, when you talk about LGBTIQ rights, most of the time there's a feel in the room that those are separate rights from human rights. And that is why most people think asking for LGBTIQ rights is special. There's nothing special about LGBTIQ rights. In fact, they are human rights. The same rights you're enjoying as a person who's not a queer person who's seated here today, for example, the enjoyment, the freedom your rights have afforded you, the same freedoms we are fighting for when it comes to the LGBTIQ community. If maybe to bring it down or even closer to home, it will mean this. Right now, you'll walk to a healthcare facility and you'll receive your services. No one will ask you who you are or how are you dressed. But for a queer person to walk into a facility, most people will think when someone asks you how you dress, it's something fun or something. But I don't think if someone came and asked you, mbona umevaa hivi, it will come like it's something nice. It's not in a positive light, right? Yeah, so I think LGBTIQ rights are basically human rights. Now, another framework I think we need to be privy to is the Universal Periodic Review. And let me leave the rest to questions I hope you'll ask that I'll answer to you. I think for me, let me finish it at how can storytelling and lived experiences of LGBTIQ individuals help shift public opinion and policy. The impact of storytelling, I think you saw it here. I'd not want to unpack that even further. Having stories that we can relate to, other than stories zenye tunasomanga novels za majuu. These days we have Africans who are able to do a lot of literature, a lot of stories that we can relate to, and we can adapt and use that in terms of shaping narratives. For me, I think advocacy tools as well is really key. What are we using? Again, I had from the sessions here we've had today, we've talked about art, we've talked about comic, we've talked about anything. As long as it's advocacy, you don't have to speak for you to advocate for something. Just do something about your body. So let me leave it at that. I'll give room to questions.
My sentiment goes to Mary Liz. Zile safe abortion yenye watu wamefanya kwa madaktari inakuanga aided na NGOs wenye wako na funds za safe abortion ndio wanalipia wasichana huko. Lakini a personally msichana tu atoke tu in a slum area, unamwambia enda pale. Kama for instance maybe Dr. Nyamu ama Dr. mwingine mwenye anafanya. It's very expensive. So the adolescent girls and young women pale kwa slums hawezi afford kwa madaktari. That's why tuna advocate. Kama ni tunaweza inasemwanga repeal ama kufanya nini hizo constitution ama hizo ma policies tuziunwind ama tuziharibu na tuziteremshe. Kama safe abortion, kama abortion ni legal, ikuwe tu legal na ikuwe affordable. Isikuwe madaktari wengine wanaenda kuifanya huko na wanaifanya expensive, alafu gava huko anatudanganya. Je, kama mtu amekuwa raped na baba ama stepfather, alafu unaniambia lazima daktari afanye hivyo, ama vile queer family, queer community in slum areas, some of them face correctional rape. Somebody has raped you, you don't have even nini, hauna hata ile nini ya kwenda. The hospitals around are not queer friendly. Kwa polisi pia huwezi enda maswali, you are judged. What will you do? Kwa Rita, good of you Rita stakeholders bila kuwalipa. Kwetu kwanza chief anakuuliza kuna nini? Kuna kakitu. Imagine kama hakuna kitu, they don't come. And we need those stakeholders, we need those policy makers, my MCA manini in our space kutusaidia kunini hii watu tunachapa manini. But what strategies do you use? Kwa sweet talk ama unaenda una smile ama nini, you know? Tunasaidiana. Strategies umesema we strategize.
So what strategies?
Ya kuita stakeholder bila kumpea kakitu.
Is there any other question?
Ingine.
Yes.
Religion and SRHR. Hiyo sijui tutaifanya aje hiyo. Tuambie tu vile how we easy beliefs, easy values, religious values and beliefs yenye ina criminalize your use of condom, use of contraception. Yesterday I was somewhere in a radio station Statazja. I was going to talk about, we were with my friend here, we were going to talk about teenage pregnancies. The first thing niliambiwa hapa hakuna kuongelea contraception yoyote ama mambo na sex
ama mambo na tulikuwa tunaongelea the triple threat. And that is a religious radio station. So pastor yeye akienda kutangaza pale kwa pulpit, kazi yake itaisha. Huyu journalist alituambia kazi yake tukitaja tu hivyo sisi na yeye tutatoka, kwa hiyo nini ataenda. How can we go about it?
All right.
Ya mwisho, thank you Fahe. To everyone. Wacha tu advocate tuko nje, to the service providers. Wacha tuweke humanity mbele. If somebody counts for you for services, hata madaktari ama nani, wacha tusijudge mtu vile amevaa, vile sijui anaongea, vile anakaa. Humanity. Wacha tuweke humanity mbele. If somebody is defiled somewhere, raped, usiulize ati sexuality yake ama mkabila gani ama nani. Let's embrace humanity in everything we do.
Thank you. That is a call to action, right? Thank you very much. Niliwaambia, niliona aliandika, niliona. I saw there was one here. I saw you, yeah, a question. Any other question? Tulikuwa na hizo mbili alafu comment mbili. Tatu. Kuna swali hapa. Yes.
Habari zenyu tena. Dabs is my name. My question is to the room, not specifically to the panelists. First, I love talking about policies. So, issue of language again. How do we contextualize bado in terms of is the international laws zenye tuko nazo, laws zenye ziko within our land? How do we make it? Am I coming up with policy briefs collectively to help our community, like to sensitize them on these policies that go around sexual and reproductive health?
One thing I believe is that change is inevitable. So everything that we do takes time, but you must believe that it can happen. There's a certain day we were not able to talk about abortion, but today we are talking about it. Then tomorrow we will push for it. So it will take time, but I believe that everything is done by human being and change is being done by human being. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Just allow me to talk upon there.
Hi everyone. So we've been discussing SRHR, we've discussed abortion, and we are talking about us as the here and now, as the generation that is. Even as we discuss it here, let's also think about our children. And this I speak from a point of view as a parent and as a queer person. There is so much out here that still hurts us as parents, and it affects our children too. So even as we safeguard ourselves, let's safeguard our partners and our children.
We are very happy when you have women in leadership. We are. But can you imagine somebody that like Karen Nyamo stands up and says, yani, vitu zenye we mwenyewe, hata mtoto wa class 3 hawezi sema. And that is the person who is seated in that office and you're hoping she's going to push for change. And then you are left with Millie. What's her name? Millie. Yes. And yeye vile anaongeanga ni kama you don't have to be like female for you to be heard. Lazima ukue a tiger. Ni war, ni vita. Tushikane mashati. But I feel like for policies and legal, the women that they are failing us. Tunangangana tukue na governors, tumengangana tukue na senators, lakini huyo senator akisimama aseme she has been through an abortion, hamtampea kura tena. So she will not speak. Atasaidia baby chini ya maji. Another thing I wanted to talk about is what when we talk about these things and people think we are toxic feminists. We are just feminists. Yeah? So we have to start teaching our daughters and teaching our boys, because change, nilisema tumkunje angali mbichi, si ndio? Yes, when we start with our daughters and our boys, I'm sure while tunapigana vita huku sisi tukitoka, hii generation nyingine inakuja haitakuwa na issues zenye tuko nazo.
The past 2 years, we have spent a lot of resources working with what we call non-traditional allies, and we group journalists and religious leaders in that category, as well as people from the academia. Now, everyone, or at least the people in this room, are aware about the religious organizations bill, which had been drafted by Senator Mungatana. Are we familiar? The Religious Organizations Bill. Okay, let me take us back a bit. Are we familiar with Shakahola? We know it happened in his county. He's the senator for Tana River, right? So as the person who experienced such a thing and it pinched him, he went and he rallied whatever forces and he came up with a bill, Religious Organizations Bill. Because if we are saying that Shakahola happened because of religious beliefs and a pastor who went haywire, he took it upon himself to correct that because he figured this is a social ill, right? But after dead bodies have been found, you can't really say, hii ni mwili ya Nyambura, hii ni mwili ya Adhiambo, hii ni mwili ya Kamau, hii ni mwili ya Ali, ile ni mwili ya Hassan, right? You can't tell, which means it was just dead human bodies, not really bodies from his own county. But because it was in his county and it was giving him bad PR, what does he do? He rallies up support and gets a religious organizations bill in place. In the climate that was in the country, don't you think that bill would have passed? If it was an SRHR bill, don't you think everybody angekuwa anapiga kura? Hata tungepeleka public participation, ingepita kama ile ya Gachagua. Not Gachagwa's public participation, but the one Senate and National Assembly. Everybody angepitisha, si ndio? And then what happens? Religious leaders go and talk to him. And we are not saying religious leaders are our enemies. We are saying if you're shepherds, I'm Catholic by the way, practicing. So I am a friend in any, whichever way you look at it, whether it's shepherding the society or as a congregant. Then religious leaders go and see him. And in masses, right? And they don't show us. Watch at venye sisi when you call policymaker, you have a bigger picture at a post just to show he's engaging with everybody. We didn't see Mungatana meeting with any of them, but what have we seen? The result is it has been withdrawn. So are they worried? Is Mungatana worried that there's going to be another Shakahola in his county? Are the other senators worried that if this is left unregulated, there's going to be another Shakahola somewhere? Something worse than Shakahola? Are they worried about that? I wasn't saying that so that I can criticize. I was saying that just to show you the power that the platform that religious leaders have to influence change. Change can sometimes start with a legal framework somewhere in a bill, in a policy. So if all of us were to say we are prioritizing engagements with religious leaders, mimi nishikane na Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops if at all wanashikika, we ushikane na Episcopal Conference, ushikane na watu SCK, ushikane na watu wa AIC, in that way, so that you try and put them in rooms or wherever, whichever method you're going to use, to try and sensitize them on how it is also a thorn in their flesh. That death from unsafe abortion, even one woman dying, is too much. That a death in their society is not a death in our society, since when you tuko kwa hii room, is also a death in their own society. And it doesn't have to be their niece or their daughter, right? Because that seems to be the only language that some of them understand, right? So if you see all this has happened in 1 year, na sisi we are sitting like this, afraid about family protection bill. Alvin and I are worried that family protection bill is going to come next year and we don't know where we are going to start. Yet we have the church and it can support us, right? Kwa hayo mengi si mafupi. Asanteni.
Thank you very much. Take it up. So
answer my questions as I give my closing remarks.
Thank you.
On affordability. See, the reason I said there's a reason why they don't legalize safe abortion is because the government has to make money from it. If you're going to charge a business owner a ridiculous amount of money to license them to do something, they're not going to give you their services for free because they also have to make money. So the reason I was saying there are places that these things are being done, but the reason we need to champion for making abortion safe and accessible and legal is so that these services are not services and like they're not new. In Kenya, if you're privileged, in Kenya, if you're anywhere between middle, upper class and upper class, you want an abortion, you go to any hospital, you get an abortion. It could be Nairobi Hospital, it could be Kenyatta Hospital. Any hospital you go, you'll get an abortion. The process of getting an abortion itself is not illegal. They criminalize the people who require the abortion. So when you're pregnant and you want an abortion, they criminalize you by beginning to say, why didn't you think about it when you had sex? And I tell people all the time, I fear having conversations about abortion from the point of rape and defilement, because that stifles the conversation. People only think then we need to legalize abortion only for people who have experienced rape or defilement. But abortion is supposed to be a medical service that is accessible to all. And the decision to decide whether to abort or not remains with the person who is carrying the pregnancy. Yeah? And so that's what we are fighting for. That we are saying, if these services can be offered to the who is who of the society just because they have money and nobody has to be questioned about anything, why can these services be offered to everyone? That's why you're told poverty makes you a criminal. In a country like Kenya, poverty makes you a criminal. And so you're a criminal that doesn't deserve to access a service. It's like a prisoner who doesn't deserve freedom. You're a criminal who doesn't deserve safe abortion just because you had sex. Because apparently, sex is beautiful until it's people who are marginalized, people who live below the lines of poverty, then people want to politicize and trivialize how you're having your sex and who you're having sex with and why you're having that same sex. And then to just answer on language and domestication of international frameworks and laws, I think language has been a barrier for a long time, but I think the reason it has been a barrier is because Mary-Liz and Rita and I don't know who will meet and Alvin will meet in a room and come up with what we think should be a policy and a law. Instead of going to the grassroots areas, for example, if you say we are making a policy about safe abortion, why don't we go to the grassroots and find people who either work in safe abortion or people who have gone through abortion, whatever kind it is, right? And then we have conversations with them and then we establish what the issues are there. As a matter of fact, in 2016-2017, we did a process with a document that was even petitioned by the African Union. It's about women and land rights. And what we did is we went to the grassroots areas in Kenya and different parts of Africa. And in every county, we had a charter. And then every charter from every county culminated to a charter, a national charter. And then all these charters from different countries, because we had around 9-10 charters from different countries, were merged together to identify issues, but also to separate issues. And when we went to the African Union in 2017, when the charters were being presented, they were presented as 8 charters, not as one charter. As 8 charters to say, when you talk about land rights, we are saying Kenya looks like this. And it has a big book there saying Kenya looks like this, and this county is like this, and this county is like this, and this county is like this. Then another country looks like this. But people are keen to identify just one 15-pager policy and say that represents everything. It's difficult to represent everything when you're really limiting yourself to which language to speak. And yes, I know there's something about legal language, policy language, and all that. But isn't language ours? So why don't we make language work for us if it's ours? And for my closing remarks, of course, thank you so much for listening. But also, like Faheh said, the work doesn't stop here. The bigger responsibility is not in here. The bigger responsibility is after we step out of here. What can we do with the things that we have said? Who do you work with? How can you incorporate what you've said in the work that you do? Religious leaders, how can you normalize conversations about safe abortion, contraceptives, SRH in your places of, I don't want to say worship, but churches have a lot of spaces for communing. I know Catholics, they have jumuiyas. I know people have different spaces that they commune as a church. How can you make sure these spaces are spaces that you can use for these conversations, for the safety of the communities that you serve with you, but also for the communities around you and everywhere else? Thank you.
So briefly, in response to my question, what strategies have we been using? Stakeholders management. What is important to them? That is what you ask yourself. It's not what is important to you. What is important to them is for them to be recognized. What is important to them, a simple thing like supporting a meal in school, and that would cost 2,000 bob, would be a buy-in for many stakeholders than every time you call them, you give them 1,000 and spend 40,000 shillings because you've given them 1,000. And that is important to them. And that is small things because you don't have resources as well. Very small, but it makes a difference. Number 2, building relationship. Visit their office. It's easier to go to where they are than bringing them to a stakeholders meeting. Then you build relationships. and it is easier to engage them. Be honest. Like, I think people think we do this work because of money. If we'd be doing this work because of money, we wouldn't be here today. We present ourselves as experts, as we are part of the communities we work in. We do not have money. We just care about human rights. Nobody gives you money to be, the money you get here will not sustain you for, but we also appreciate. But to be honest, we don't have money. So just those honest conversations, and then incentive. You do not always have to have the same incentive every time they come. Incentives can come in different ways. Do not, normalizing every time people come, you give them money. Every time people come, they become, it becomes, entitlement comes because now the notion that we have money. That one has worked for us. My parting shot, it speaks about, we've always thought that knowledge gap is the problem. Where people are not literate, nini. Right now we have excess information. We have chat GTP. You can get anything from social media and everywhere. But do we still have the problem? So you still have the same problem even worsened. So what does that tell us? The problem lies within us. It's about the norms. It's about the little things we do. Let's start. You don't need to make a difference by convening a meeting of 100 strangers. Yet at your home, your child, your mother already has toxic gender norms. You can start as small as talking to your parent, doing it within your small circle. I realized that, and this is a lesson with Community Voices Network, that people are very willing to, young people, if Dixon is a bit younger than me, maybe 21 years and I'm 25 or whatever, they're more likely to listen to me. People do, you see, that peer influence, but if you're a bit older kidogo, people see you as a role model. Could we use those as opportunities for learning? And this just also speaks about the conversation about Gen Z, millennials and all that. Because we want to leverage on the Gen Z movement. It's an opportunity for us to share lessons among ourselves because it's easier. People will not listen to pastor akikuja kuambia. It's about ule mtu youth leader. Ama ule mtu ako closer to them in terms of it. So let's do it small. Let's start small. We do not need to make a difference. Nati, what 1 million big hotels, big what, and all that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, mine goes specifically to Dab's reflection and question on why we need, or rather how we are going to turn these global commitments to really be beneficial for our citizens, our countrymen and women, and then non-binary. For me, I feel there's a need to review the existing laws that we have and policies to really communicate what is happening in the grassroots level, like my colleague Mary-Liz said. And this will call for legal audits at everywhere and also engaging stakeholders to whichever capacity it may be. And there's the need for legislative reforms whereby there will be amendment and enactments of laws that are already there. We all know that we are very good in paper, but when it comes to implementation, it's another thing altogether. But of course, we also need to come up with new laws that speak to the people. So we need to have guidelines. We need to have national action plans that are workable for the citizens. And of course, something that we cannot forget is the community dialogues, which usually build support, especially if you're a grassroots organization. This has really come in handy, whereby you're reaching directly to the citizens. And of course, like my colleague says, there's always a need, especially for young people, to be facilitated to ensure that things are running smoothly. Yeah.
I'll also be very brief. So for me, I will say on religion and SRHR, as someone mentioned, before we could not even talk about SRHR with religious leaders, let alone even them being part of such discussions. So clearly there's progress, although there's much more that needs to be done very quickly, because clearly there are several issues that need to be tackled. And we've all realized that the religious leaders, they are key stakeholders in the work that we do. So also just appreciating that whatever we're doing, it's gradual progress. Where we've come from and where we are now, clearly there's a difference. Although we might experience that at times feel like we are going back, there's some regression, but if we compare where we've come from and where we are now, there's some sort of difference. And it's also important for us to appreciate how far we've come from, to also inspire us to go even where we want to go. So also just appreciating the steps that we've taken so far, the progress, and also realizing that we need to work together collaboratively. Now this is my parting shot. There's a lot of fragmentation among CSOs, and I've seen what working together with other organizations, what can be achieved. Come together to work towards a particular cause, there's so much more that you achieve. But when you run alone, get the glory alone, then in this sense you're doing that one-man show. You have to work together, whether it's with the community, stakeholders, other organizations. Working collaboratively is the way to go. The same way opposition wako pamoja, here we need to be together. Because you will win agenda and say you've won nothing. Until we all win together, then we can say we're progressing. Thank you.
Give a coffee. Thank you very much.
I want us to take a minute and look around. Look around the room. So, a serious fact is that since I began my SRHR advocacy work back in 2010, I've never ever sat in a room that it's an SRHR festival that is youth-led, youth-managed, youth-prepared, and everybody in the room is 99% is a young person. Now, for me, having said that, I think we've been in rooms for so long asking to sit on the tables, but then what I'm looking at is we took the table on the side and we sat on it on how we want it. So in other words, what I'm meaning is enough of complaining so much. There's a whole movement here of young people for the very first time in history for me to have young people, especially around sexual reproductive health and rights. Rita understands. I think Mary-Liz understands as well, even Kevin and everybody. So what can we do? Again, seriously, when I said let's bring our efforts together, let's show the bigger movement of older people who are young at heart that we can do something. So the Gen Z set the precedence, and I think it's something we can emulate, and we've already done it. Remember, this is the very first time young people are seated. It's youth-led, youth-managed, and youth-prepared, and talking about SRHR, and it's a festival. That is a very huge plus for the past 10 years. Thank you so much.